Boots and Backstraps, brought to you by Homes by Shayne and produced by Danny Geo Productions.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Boots and Backstraps podcast.
Come on now.
The hunt is on, looking for backstraps, way deep in the woods, tracking in a swamp to a hay field under the harvest moon. When the tags are filled, it's time to switch up our boots. Head down to the honky-tonk, get us a swing dance or two. We're talking about boots and backstraps.
Hey everybody, this is a show where we talk all things hunting and country music.
From the classics through today.
From big bucks to bull elk. We've got it all.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Boots and Backstraps. I am your host, Shayne Michael, and I'm joined in studio, as always, by my hard-working and incredibly tired co-host, Tomcat.
Come on now.
We doing, TK?
I'm tired.
We were just talking before we started the show about all the time we put in on our new mobile hunting shack, we'll call it.
Yeah, we greased the bearings today and put on new wheels and did a lot. Fixed some wiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're hunting and you are not 20, you don't want to be sleeping on the ground in a tent.
Did you take a picture of it? Oh,
of course
Lord.
I did. I even have a video tour.
A video tour. Got that for $2,000.
And it's actually in really good
really
condition.
In good shape.
Yeah, I mean, for being an 80s model camper, it's certainly older and it's dated on the inside, which gives it some sort of like, I don't know, nostalgia. Yeah, character. But it's in really good condition.
It is. We were just nervous. You never know.
Everything
the
works
bearings were probably fine, but we pulled them out, put new bearings in, greased them, the whole deal, put bearing buddies on. A lot of messy, but, you know, at least now we can drive down the road and we know we're safe.
There's Tom's bed.
Yeah, she got an 80s appeal to it.
Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't know you guys videotaped it.
She's a big fan
Custom
of
wallpaper.
There's a lot of really great things about this, okay? It's look at that upholstery. Come on.
Come on now.
Oh, and the bunk beds. That's my other favorite.
And the turlet.
Yeah, I was going to say, everything on the camper works great except the shitter.
Well, it works. It's just did you see Danny in the mirror?
I did.
Well, that's pretty funny.
So we've got a great show set up tonight. Another guest with a 2 initial name, which works really good. It's easier to remember that way.
Yeah, I'm excited because he's been a good friend of yours and a good friend of mine for a long, long time, and we try to get colorful folks on the podcast, and this guy is certainly colorful.
Yeah, that's putting it quite mildly. I would say that our guest tonight is as or more tapped into the local music scene as anyone else in the region, and that's one of the reasons why we have him here tonight. And also, he's got his fingers in a few other projects that we're super excited about.
Yeah,
too.
and I heard you talking a little bit about it earlier, and I can't wait to hear PT elaborate more on, especially the one up by Elk River.
Yeah, ERX, and we'll obviously go long-winded on that because it's coming up in just a couple weeks. Actually, like 3 weeks, I think, right? Something like that. So anyway, we're going to start off, as we always do, with our Whiskey of the Week segment. And I brought in something that will be a little bit less favorable to the ladies because this one has got a higher proof. This is a wild turkey. This is the rare breed specific edition.
What ladies were you thinking of?
Well, our Danny and Jill and when we've got Nicole, they typically...
The girls we've hung out with would prefer a little stronger proof.
Yeah, well, there you go. Typically, the ones that work with us here like the lower proof, and this one's 58.4, which makes it 116.8% alcohol. That's a little bit stiffer. It's going to have a little bit more burn in the front and in the finish, but this is an excellent, excellent whiskey. So the deal with Wild Turkey, pretty much everybody knows Wild Turkey.
You bet.
Most people know the Wild Turkey 101, which is kind of like your standard bar rail Wild Turkey.
Yep.
This particular distillery obviously has a few labels. The rare breed's the one that I like. It's I would say comparable to like a single barrel Jack. It's their premium. Mm-hmm. And the thing with Wild Turkey is it was the founder in the mid 1800s was originally a wine maker, and then in 1940 there was or I should say the late 1800s, this winemaker was with some friends and they were on a turkey hunting trip. and they were chasing what they called wild turkey, which is sort of where the name came from.
Sure.
And then in 1940, the current owners came in, and so that at that time it was this gentleman named Jimmy Edwards, and Jimmy Russell, and he and his son and his now grandson are 3 generations still working this distillery. So it's Jimmy and Eddie, his son, which is where the Edwards thing came from. So Jimmy, Eddie, and then, of course, Eddie's son, Bruce, all work in this distillery. And Jimmy is actually kind of known in the whiskey industry as like the grandfather of bourbon. He is sort of like the master distiller of master distillers. He's revered and respected to be sort of the top of the food chain when it comes to master distillers. And actually, one other exciting thing to kind of bring into this one is we've talked about this Hollywood actor a few times in this podcast, a gentleman by the name of Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey was approached by Wild Turkey, the distillery, in 2015 to be their celebrity sort of like...
Yep, I've seen a few of his commercials.
Yeah, and he actually sort of renegotiated when they first came in because he's such a big fan of bourbon and Wild Turkey specifically. He said, I don't want to just be the face and the advertising and the celebrity spokesperson. I want to be involved in the distillery, and so they actually renegotiated the deal, and now he's their creative director. And so he's very passionate about the whiskey. He's very passionate about bourbon in general, and so a little tidbit about Matthew McConaughey. But
All right.
exactly right. So tonight we're drinking the Wild Turkey Rare Breed.
Well, let's give it a taste.
We will indeed. You'll put that on the nose and tell me what you think there. And while you're doing that, we will intro our guest. So we hinted a little bit earlier about this gentleman being the guy when it comes to local music, especially in the country scene.
Gentleman.
Everybody knows him. He does radio. He does nightclubs. He does some TV. This guy does everything. He's got a patio party that he does weekly that...
Former male dancer.
Knock your socks off. Yeah, I think he was in Magic Mike, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Wasn't he like one of the main
Former
guys?
and current.
Ladies and gentlemen, help us welcome to Boots and Backstraps, PT.
It's great to be here, man.
PT
Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it very much. And I'm looking forward to this whiskey, especially anything good enough for Matthew McConaughey is good enough for me, you know?
All right, let's get a clink and
had to
drink
cut
here,
mine
gentlemen.
a little bit. Hence the different colors. Good to see you, PT.
Yep, gentlemen,
Cheers.
thanks for the opportunity, huh? Yeah.
We've had
good.
some great
Isn't
bourbons.
that nice?
It's really good.
You know, people overlook Wild Turkey.
They do.
They're just familiar with it. Wild Turkey is great.
It's the 101 because it's sort of like the standard rail with your Jim Beam and your Jack Black label, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so it's like, they have other labels. They've got like 6 labels that they sell, including a rye that's really nice. But I like this Rare Breed.
That is good.
I also love the fact that that's what we can do here is talk and drink, right? Because that's kind of what, in a lot of ways, I think that's what life is all about is
Yeah.
like, sitting around and, telling stories with your buddies and probably trying to be a little bit smarter than you think you are or whatever. And
They probably frown on that in your day gig, right?
Yeah, I got, I don't know if I could, I probably could get away with drinking a little bit. We, nowadays with the whole COVID protocols, we're in the studio now at the Wolf, but there's not as many people in the studio, so I feel like Thunder and I could probably get away with it a little
Greg
bit.
Thunder?
Greg Thunder, yeah.
He's working with you?
Yeah, it's Thunder
Oh,
and
my God.
PT. Yeah, so, I feel like it's possible. I don't know, how long it would last, and honestly, a little later in the show, obviously, if we're getting a little too hard, but you never know. They probably think I'm drunk most of the time anyway, to be honest.
Now you're on there, is it 3 hours?
It's 6 to 10, so it's technically 4 hours. But the most of the morning show stuff is from 6 to 9. After 9 a.m., a lot of people are sort of assumed at work or whatever, so it gets just kind of more music driven. So
Okay, gotcha.
Remember I sent you that text? I was trying to remember my old friend's name, Greg Thunder.
The one
And
you
he-
shipped to me?
The one that I shipped over to you while we were driving.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
I
he's
knew
the guy. You knew him?
I knew Greg and I go way back.
Oh, that's awesome.
Way back.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Great dude.
We've had a lot of fun.
Nice.
And a lot of stories. Maybe we'll tell some Greg Thunder stories. He'll be pissed.
Yeah. He's got a few of them. There's no doubt.
Man.
There's no doubt. He's spun a couple of spun a couple of good ones like while we've been off mic, and sometimes that's the funniest times is when you're like off mic.
And sometimes that's the only time you can tell.
Right,
some
exactly.
Of those
Yeah, some of them. And nowadays, I think in this like long form, and kudos to you guys with Boots and Backstraps, because in more of the long form, you can get some of those stories. Where I feel like now in the radio landscape, and certainly like in music-driven formats, it's a little bit harder for us.
Oh, you're up against the bumper.
Right. It's like, you basically have like 60 seconds to get whatever it is you need to get in, and some of it's a promo or whatever. So you're kind of stuck a little bit with that. But so, yeah, I love telling stories, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on the show tonight, guys.
Well, we're going to tell some stories. We have some questions for you. And we can get into Greg Thunder a little bit later on after I have a little bit more to drink.
Well, it would make sense with Rare Breed.
Well, I guess I should just ask you, as long as we're talking about it. He moved to Texas. He's with Chaos 95, and he used to come into my restaurant quite a bit,
okay.
Red Oak. And we kind of reunited because we used to do a rock and roll show at the Hog's Breath, and Greg would come. He must have been working with, well, I guess it was Chaos 95 at the time, and a lot of stories back then. And then we kind of reunited, and he got married to a gal. She was a Playboy in Playboy magazine. Then he moved to Texas.
Did you know this?
The previous, maybe the previous one, I think, because it was like a dancer or something like that she was. I think she was a dancer.
Who the hell can keep track of his wives?
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
the dirt is already flying.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple of, he's probably got a couple that I don't even know about. I think he's on 3 or 4 right now. I've met her. She's actually been over to our place, the most recent one, Jess. She's a great gal. We've had a couple of opportunities for just like my wife and Greg and his. I think Thunder nowadays, he's definitely turned, in the old New Leaf type of a scenario. But he told some stories from back in the IROC Z days. There he is, right there.
Look at that old.
He's told some stories from back in like the when he was doing top 40 in New York, in like the heydays of radio and whatnot, and spun some stuff. He used to do a bit where he was on, I think, a station in Washington where he was like this guy, and he was kind of doing the radio, www, and he was called the Smoker, and it's awesome if you go to YouTube and look up the Smoker. It's just really good, and he's kind of like he's honestly one of those guys where like he's kind of from a previous era of radio specifically.
He is.
Him and another guy at our cluster on 104.1 Jack FM right now, Remy Maxwell. He's kind of in that same boat, and so it's really cool for me to be able to be around what I would consider like, frankly, like kind of local radio royalty, and maybe not even local. I mean, like national radio royalty. It's pretty cool.
He and I co-hosted a fundraiser. I should have thought about this before I brought it up. The hockey player, Brett Hedekin. Brett Hedekin's a good friend of mine.
PT's a big hockey guy. I don't know if you know that.
I was a big hockey guy. Yeah.
And, I actually hosted it, and Greg was a guest.
Oh, cool.
And, Brett lost his best friend here in the Twin Cities, and, God, he had celebrities from Hollywood sending donations like nothing I've ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sure you've emceed some fundraisers and benefits. This, you can just, his wife's Christy Yamaguchi, and they just have so many great connections, and it was just this amazing fundraiser. Anyway, it was a ball, but he is kind of a legend because when I introduced him, he got a huge roast. No one knew the hell I was. I had to introduce myself. I said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tomcat, one of the founders of the Wee Fest, the Rowdy Cowboy Show, owned a couple clubs, and I said, well, if
and
there's
the cricket sounder wasn't playing or whatever.
No, I finally wound up saying, well, I guess if there's anyone here that already knows who I am, there's a good chance you've got a drinking problem.
Yeah, right.
So, but anyway, Greg is,
I just want to say, do not Google Greg Thunder and Tomcat. It's not okay.
By the way, when you say to not do something, I
put
think
it
that's
up here on the screen.
Number one thing
No.
right there.
It's rated not okay.
It's rated not okay?
Yes.
Even for this show?
Which is kind of saying
Yeah.
you
something.
mean you've got something that you Googled that Greg Thunder and I did together?
Okay, fine, but I'm not opening the page.
No, I'm just asking you.
Is it actually them, or is it?
No, it's not them.
Okay,
That's
It's
it.
not
Tomcat.
them. Do you see this?
Okay.
Oh,
What is happening? It's
no,
not okay.
I know where you're
it's-
going.
Yeah.
Don't
my
even
bad.
open that.
It's too late. I can't unsee it.
Can I get a wolf howl?
I never thought that topic would come up. But do you know, if you Google tomcat, Katt, and I got to tell you, I was going to open a banquet facility up in Motley, Minnesota. I lived up in Pillager. Long story.
Okay.
But I was sitting with the city council, and there was these two old gals there, and I said, I'm probably not going to do this deal if I don't get some local support from you guys, blah, 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 long story. Anyway, the meeting ended. I never did do the banquet, but there was these two old gals there. I mean, old, gray hairs, and as I was leaving, I could have swore they said, "We don't want no porno star in this town." And I kind of looked at them. I didn't know if they were talking to me or about me, and I just kind of forgot about it. And then one day, my wife and I Googled Tomcat, and he's dead, but there's a famous gay porn star named Tomcat.
Do you believe in reincarnation? Because I just started believing in it.
Yeah. Like that
And I'm
happened.
I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh my God.
rim shot.
Then
I love that.
This is like 2 years later, the light bulb finally went off. I remembered what those two old
Yeah, they had
gals
Googled you.
They had Googled me, and they thought I was a porn star.
Yeah.
Like, what the- and you would think after all those years, but I never got on the computer much. I'm not of that generation.
Yeah.
And I never thought to Google Tomcat. And
It's on page 2.
evidently a couple
Don't get
people
to
have,
page 2.
and this guy is evidently dead now, and he's
Okay,
a real greasy
You
looking
can also
dude.
find a vintage boy Tomcat cartoon, gay costume
There
porn
you go.
star.
There
So if
go.
you want to relive something, I don't know what's going on here, but we can get it.
You ever
well,
worn
put,
that before?
You put Greg Thunder in there, and it's probably Tomcat Thunder Down Under or something like that. I mean, seriously. Sounds like a good little bit.
Oh, wow. Thunder's going to have to see this.
Well,
too
if,
much.
if you're going to make him watch this, I'm going to talk a lot more about that clown.
Yeah. Well, he's had to do that. When he was with KS95, he hosted the, the Thunder Down Unders by the, at the Medina and stuff like that or whatever. And I think he did maybe even one recently, because he was at Cities 97 not too long ago, and that's it's a female driven audience. So I'm sure he had done that too. So he has fun with it. I mean, he treats it very positively, and he has a blast with it. He's a good dude. Great guy.
Yeah, it sounds like a talented
I can't
DJ.
wait till we get off camera.
Got more to say.
Oh, do I ever?
Well, PT, as much as we love talking
I'm sorry,
about
Greg.
Well, yeah, that's we can have him on the show some other time. I
Yeah,
suppose.
he can have his own show. This show's
Yeah.
about you, brother.
Wow, appreciate that.
So I wanted to start with PT, the early years, PT, the origin story. How did PT get interested in music?
Okay.
This is pre-facial hair PT.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, obviously, growing up, what's kind of funny is I grew up in Bloomington, so, a pretty big city. I mean, third or fourth biggest city in the state of Minnesota at some point in time. So, I wasn't by any means, a country bumpkin, as some people may. I mean, I don't know what they perceive me to be as at this point in time, but, I was into pretty much all kinds of music. I mean, I was into, everything from Metallica to, Snoop Dogg and rap and hip hop and R&B. And I mean, I didn't even really like country because my dad would listen to country in his car. And he would be he was one of those dads where it was hey man, when it's my car, I'm going to listen to whatever I want to listen to.
Yeah.
And then when you get your own car, you can listen to whatever you want. But the sad thing is he ingrained so much country music in us. By the time I had my own car, I wanted to listen to freaking country music. So it was his little plan worked out,
Yeah, plant the seed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was probably my early days into music specifically. But I often say that my mom, was more of the, kind of the oldies but goodies, Dan Donovan back in the day on the Cool 108 back then, if you're familiar with that.
I thought you were going to throw out some artist, and you said Dan Donovan.
No,
I wonder how many people know who the hell he is. I know who he is.
I doubt there's anybody well, maybe there's a couple people listening, but literally back in my mom was a huge Elvis fan, and so really my roots are very eclectic from a standpoint of music. Country definitely still my favorite, to this day from a genre standpoint, but I'll get down with anything. I'll go to the karaoke bars and rip some Young MC, Bust a Move, or whatever you want to do.
Man, that's a classic.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So that's kind of I think my early days in music specifically. And, I think my dad and I would listen to like WCCO radio, like back in the day. And like, we would kind of talk about how cool it would be to be on the radio. And it was never really a thing for me, until I was about like 27, 28 years old or so, somewhere in my late 20s, and I had a falling out with my boss. I was a sales guy. I was doing merchant services at the time. And I kind of started doing like a podcast back then, and I was like kind of working on my chops and doing this whole thing. And I was like, I kind of want to be in radio, And at one point in time, my boss just sort of like kind of pissed me off, and I finally was just like, I had it. And I walked into his office one day, and I'll never forget this. I walked into his office, and I didn't have any other gigs lined up, by the way. I just walked into his office and like had my key fob there, or whatever used at the time. It might have been just an actual physical key. And I was like, I basically slid my key across the desk or whatever, and I was like, I'm out of here. And he goes, oh, did you find another gig? And I said, nope. I just know I can't work for you anymore. Yeah. And I walked out the door.
Wow.
And then,
did he say anything when you were walking out?
Not really. No, I mean, I think he's
speechless.
It was kind of a scenario where, like, over the course of the previous, probably 3 to 6 months, it had kind of gotten, tumultuous to a certain degree. It was a small company. It was just, like, kind of me and him and a couple other people, so it was, like, pretty small.
It's your first mic drop moment.
It was kind of a mic drop moment. I mean, like, there's something to be said for, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people listening, have had a moment like that where they sort of said, like, this is kind of a make or break type of thing. And it kind of was for me a little bit. And I was like, people are like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to go be on the radio. And they're like, what do you mean? You're going to go back to like go to school or something like that? And I said, nope, I'm going to go sell for a radio station. I'm going to learn what the business is all about or whatever. And then at some point in time, I'm going to work my way on air and whatever. And, here we are 12 years later and 10 years in the radio business, and the rest is history. So that was kind of my defining moment in music and radio, I guess.
It's cool that you made that decision to build the foundation, because most people are just aspire to get on the mic first. Like, they just aim for the top of the mountain. It's like there's a lot of stuff you got to climb over to get to that.
Right. Well, I mean, so it's no different than, we talked about knowing a lot of artists and kind of cutting your teeth and stuff like that. And, some of the best artists and musicians or whatever are the ones that, they travel around, they gig, they sell merchandise, they build their following organically, right? And you kind of have to do that. Right.
Chris Christopherson.
And you kind of look at it like this, I think, in the radio world, like, I wanted to know how the radio business worked, like kind of a full circle thing, like how, like, when you sell an ad, like, why do advertisers come to this radio station? You know what I mean? Or whatever, this podcast or whatever platform it happens to be. And so by trying to understand like the full 360 approach, I think that gave me a leg up maybe over like other people that were just trying to, maybe aspire to be like rich and famous. And let's be honest, any kids out there listening, if you're trying to go into radio to be rich and famous,
ain't gonna be rich.
It ain't going to work. I can assure you.
Is this a rude awakening?
You're not going to be rich, and you're probably not going to be famous or maybe infamous. And I think that honestly, here's the other thing too. Because I went into radio when I was like 30 years old or whatever, I think the idea of me, like, I didn't have visions of like grandeur. Like, I kind of went into radio because I'm like, dude, you know what I am? I'm a radio personality. I just didn't have a radio like station or a platform to do that. Whereas other people maybe when they're younger might go into it with the intention of like you said, I want to be on the radio. I want to be famous or whatever. Yeah. Whereas for me, it was more like, I think this is who I am, and I just want to pursue that. If that makes sense. And
it does make sense. I tell you, I've had brushes with radio. I've done a lot of commercials. Did a little bit of radio out in Colorado. And most recently, Neil and I are good friends from Bob.
Yeah.
We were going to do the Tomcat Rowdy Cowboy show on Bob.
Okay, yeah.
And I was there every other day, practicing and going through it. And we talked about money, and all of a sudden, not just because of the money, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm kind of done with the Rowdy Cowboy show.
Right.
And there's no money in it.
Right, there's no money. Like, literally, unless it's...
I didn't really... The only other thing that was left was notoriety, and I'm way past that.
Yeah.
I don't care about notoriety, and I said, Neil, I think I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
And, we were ready to go, and I just...
And you were cool with that, though. Like, you were at peace with that decision to pass on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neil, I mean, truth be told, Neil gave me my first break in radio. I mean, he gave me the chance to be on the air, and I've told him this publicly and privately that I certainly appreciate that opportunity, and I owe him a major debt of gratitude for that.
I love Neil. He's a great guy, and we're nothing but great friends, and he's
been in radio locally forever.
I know.
Oh yeah. He literally
he is Bob. When everyone thinks his name is Bob,
right? They do, yeah. No, I mean he's carved out a really strong, niche with his audience, with their audience. A lot of people know I have been a part of that audience. I mean, I think a lot of their audience right now still shares a lot of like my audience personally and some of the things that I've been involved with, and so Neil and I remain very good friends to this day. And he'll be at LIVIN Music Festival, like we'll get him up on stage or whatever the whole deal. So. But yeah, so he's a great guy, and I'm really appreciative for the opportunity he gave to me. So
yeah, great man. I noticed he's turning around. We're going to have to rework this configuration because
I'm sorry, I couldn't see what was going on.
PT's looking over his shoulder to see the screen, and when I'm looking at you, the camera is looking at the back of my head, and I think.
Well, they're just trying to get the better side.
Yeah, no,
that's by design.
I understand that. No. But whatever.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure.
I'm not too worried about it.
And I'm not worried about it in the least.
I'm going to start kicking you under the table every time you start whining about
this
it.
This is our third.
All of a sudden, the table's broken.
It
won't even be subtle anymore.
This is about our fourth configuration, and
I'm
like, I don't care.
There's a squirrel underneath the table.
Yeah, and it bites.
And
it bites, yeah.
Shayne puts us all together, and I'm like, just tell me what to do, where to sit, what time to be there. And
I was going to say, PT, one of the things that both of you have, but because this is your show, then we're not going to talk about Tom for the moment.
Thank you.
One of the things that you both have, but for you in this particular instance, that gives you that leg up is you have this unique brand, you have this unique sound, you have this unique approach to what you're doing. Too many people that get in the business are just like photocopies of each other.
Right.
And that doesn't work.
Right.
If you're going to have longevity, you've got to carve out your own lane, kind of have your own thing. So there's definitely like a mantra for how you go about being a professional, whether it's on-air jock or it's an MC for a festival or it's a nightclub MC or DJ, whatever. You have to understand like the professionalism that goes into that role. But to have long-term success, you have to be unique. You have to stand out above the crowd, right?
And I think especially in country music, I think in that space, like people will see through, your if you're not authentic, like they'll see through that to a certain degree.
Right.
And I think that, and I'm very grateful for that, and thank you for the compliment. I think if there's anything that I want to be, as a personality, is I want to be genuine, right? So I want people to like hear me on the air and whatever, listen for 6 months or a year, and then I want them to meet me at an event and be like, oh my God, it was the same guy that I met on the, like I literally. It's just on the maybe a little bit, bigger because you're doing it like more on air type of a thing. But I think I take a lot of pride in trying to be me, and hopefully people like that. I mean, to your point, like not everybody likes everybody, right? So like they have different styles, exactly. So you just got to kind of be yourself, and if you can be, the best version of yourself, and hopefully you've got some things to your point that people are. Attracted to, and of course I mean that in more of like a platonic sense of like if you have an attractive personality that people want to be a part of, then maybe you've got something. But yeah, I agree. If you try to be somebody else, it may work in the short term, to be honest, but like I think long term, even if it works long term, to be honest, it's like I don't want that. Like I'd rather live, one life being me than 100 lives, being super successful as somebody else. You know what I mean?
Well, there's two things I'll say. The first of which is obviously you and I have known each other a long time. We've spent a fair amount of time together off of recorded devices.
Probably most of the radio career that I talked about. I mean, honestly, we've probably known each other for 7-8 years at this point in time.
Yeah, and so I was just thinking about all the times we've spent together, including Wings at Serums. You are who you are. Like you're just, there's no punching in, punching out.
What is Wings of Serums?
Like some of the greatest wings around. Serums, they got the big 50.
In
Anoka. They got that big 50 platter.
Oh, it's a bar.
And I think, to be honest, I feel like the pizza tray is what people love about it because it comes out on like a big tin pizza tray, right?
Yeah.
And it's got, 50 wings in there, so you usually get, like, I think, 5 different...
God, that makes me hungry.
Oh, my God. It's so good. Like, it's so good.
Yeah, it's a club downtown Anoka bar. It's called Serums.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they are known for having, like, a
I got
huge
you.
selection
The wings
of wings.
at Serums.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
go
met
there
a few times.
Yeah,
and
we
have
go there a
wings.
couple times. And actually, to be honest, my first introduction to the Rowdy Cowboy show, I think we were at Serums talking about like how we were going to incorporate it into PT on the patio, right?
Yeah,
because
right.
we were doing this idea of like, kind of me as an MC and maybe like you and KG being there and being a part
There
of
we
it.
go.
And there it is, right? So that was the original days of like
Is
the Rowdy
that
Cowboy
you?
show. How about that? Huh?
Look
Pre-facial
at
hair.
that hair.
When
When I saw you we did a thing together at
that was like 8 years ago.
Where was that?
A long time ago, almost 10 years ago.
Pavlisky's.
Yeah,
remember?
Pops. Man, Pops on
You-
like, was that 65 or whatever
Yeah.
over there? Yeah, Central.
The original or the one that his son owned?
The original.
Okay, so that one was like Old 10 and Central.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
you're
did
right.
a
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Andover was the sons. Brad.
Okay,
owned
yeah.
that one.
Yeah, we did a thing.
I
yeah,
introduced
and I
Brad
did-
to his wife.
I
Are
didn't.
you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. She was hanging out the
Hopefully
Hog's
he's
Breath,
thankful.
and Brad was hanging out the Hog's Breath. They fell in love. I mean, bang! They're like just.
Can I share a
instant.
funny story with you guys real quick?
Yeah, please do.
So I was up there with Kenny Flex and
Yeah.
Killer Kyle. Killer Kyle works for us normally
Yeah.
as our statistician, but he's not here tonight.
Okay.
And we were up there seeing Hairball, I think.
Okay.
So it's a packed house. This is the Pavs, not Pavlitsky's,
Yep.
Pavs, the newer one.
Yep.
And
Brad's place.
Brad's place. And I ordered a shot of Jack Neat, and they brought it over in a plastic cup because, there's a bazillion people in there. They're not handing out glassware. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine. Like, I get it. But it was like the short pour of short pours.
Yeah.
Like, the bottom of the solo cup has that, like, little indent.
Yeah,
The first
like,
little thing.
basically didn't even
and
make
it
that.
barely got
Yeah.
there. And I was like, I've been drinking Jack for 25 years. I'm like, I know what an ounce looks like.
Yeah.
That ain't an ounce.
Yeah.
And so I just told when our server came back around, I was like, hey, that's a short pour. There's no way that's an ounce.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to get more than an ounce if it's neat, right? You're supposed to get
Sure.
an ounce and a half, 2
Yeah.
ounces.
Yeah.
This should be generous.
Yep.
This is like a half ounce probably.
Yeah.
And so she's like, no, it's right. And I'm like, it's not right. So she sends Brad's wife over to the table, who tries to argue with me.
Okay.
And saying, no, that's definitely. I'm like, that is
God,
not
I wish
an
you'd have
ounce.
brought up
It's
my
like,
name
get a
at that
shot
point.
glass right now.
So she says, well, we use jiggers. And I'm like, go get your jigger right now. I'm like, I will put $20 on the table right now. It says that's not an ounce.
I love it.
And she's like, okay. So she goes to the bar. She gets a jigger, and we poured it in the jigger. Wasn't even half.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she was just like speechless, just standing there staring at me. And I'm like, I've been drinking Jack Daniels a long time, and I knew right when she set that cup down that wasn't an ounce.
Right.
And I go, between you and I, when it's a neat drink,
Yeah.
as opposed to like a cocktail where it's a mixed over diet or Coke or whatever, they got to be a little bit more generous.
It's funny that they were like that hardcore about the situation.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you got Hairball in here. Like,
and it's
people are rocking.
$8 for a shot.
I was gonna say, like, we're going, like, we're crank. Like, you probably wasted more time and energy and resources, trying to get it figured out.
And
right?
this is like 15 years ago. So at that point, they're probably paying.
drinks were flowing.
They're
Yeah.
probably paying like $15 for the whole bottle.
right.
I got to
Charging
tell.
me
I got to
$8 on
tell
a
you
shot.
my Brad story. He would hang out in the DJ booth
At Hog's Breath?
At the Hog's Breath,
Okay.
and he's like, "Who is that girl at the bar?" And I said, "Well, that's I don't remember her name." His wife now, and
Yeah.
but I knew her because
One
she
that
was,
doesn't know what
she
an
was a
ounce is.
regular. So I introduced him, and I swear to
can
God, I
imagine,
never
yeah.
saw him again. They went off and they fell in love, and they were like, and then all of a sudden they just started banging out babies, and it was like, well, geez, there was no beating around the bush on that.
There you
deal.
go.
They were meant to be together.
That was a fun spot. Did you ever do anything with that club?
Not really. It was. I would say it was probably a little bit more like ahead of my time in terms of where I was in like the events business, because I kind of came into it like, again, hot and heavy like 7-8 years ago, and even my first 3 years in radio, technically I was a sales guy. So, I think it was just like probably not like past, like previous to my time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, my even back in the day, like I don't even know if I was like a clubbing, partying guy. I mean, I turned into a clubbing, partying guy. I went to Wisconsin-Madison for college. And I definitely like had, the experience there. I mean, it was a great school on top of everything, but I
Drank
definitely
a little beer, did you?
Definitely had some. I never drank.
Is that a credit?
Believe it or not, I literally, well, it absolutely is. You get several credits for your ability to drink.
I'm telling you.
But I
I
never
know about
drank.
all the Wisconsin colleges.
Seriously, like until spring of my freshman year of college, I had never drank booze at all. So I literally pledged a fraternity as like a sober guy or whatever. And I told him flat out, as I said, look, I'm going to pledge this. And there was a bunch of good guys in it, and I really loved what was going on. And I pledged it. And I said flat out, I said, if you ever force me to drink, I'll leave in a minute. Because the way I looked at it was,
that's pretty good.
I said like I'll be a part of this organization if it's based on like the merits of who the people are or whatever.
Right.
And they stuck by it. They were all good. And then I did start drinking, obviously, and I've had a lot of
They
fun.
could tell you weren't from Wisconsin.
They knew I was from Minnesota. No. But I think,
They drink a fair amount at SCSU, too, though.
look, they drink everywhere.
God.
Like,
Man,
that's the thing.
yeah.
People would be like, oh, Madison's a big party school. And I'll be like, okay.
River
Show
Falls.
me a school that
Stout
isn't.
is
You know
a
what I mean?
big party.
You can find
Mankato,
schools
St. Cloud.
wherever you want to go that are going to be great party schools. So
Absolutely.
I think you need to you need to define your existence in college based on, hopefully something other than just like whether or not the school is a party school. Because Madison, it was very much work hard, play hard. I mean, people that go to or get accepted to some pretty prestigious schools use Madison as like their backup school. So like there's still still a good school, but I definitely had my fair share of good times too, no doubt about that.
Fantastic. Well, the second thing I was going to say, PT, is I'm going to roll into a little radio segue here.
Please do.
As you talked about,
Look at this guy.
You being genuine.
Yeah.
Not my first rodeo.
Yeah, it's literally not your first rodeo.
Literally not. So you being genuine also sort of rolls right into this. Everything you touch is gold, brother, because you have got your fingers in a lot of other things, and it seems like every time you start something, it just takes off like wildfire. So I was going to have us kind of go right into this Midwest CMO business because I'm super impressed with what's going on with it. We got Matt Gronke that's going to be on the podcast in September.
Yeah.
Super good dude, obviously.
Great dude. Yeah. In fact, we brought him in as sort of an artist, but also like kind of a business producer guy. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring him onto the board and the leadership is because I think he has the ability to see the music industry, but
Yes.
from a lot of lenses. And I think
Yes.
anytime you're in a leadership role, especially in an organization like that serves members and serves other people, I think you have to have an incredible amount of empathy and an incredible amount of the opportunity to be able to see things from multiple angles.
And we're kindred spirits because he's a cancer survivor. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor.
100%.
So we connected back in the day when he was going through all his stuff when Midwest CMO was first started.
Right.
CMO.
Yeah, so let's start
Back up.
back there, PT. You get
Okay.
this idea.
Back up. What is CMO?
Yeah, let's go back to where the concept came from.
Sure. So originally, it was actually a conversation I had with Tom Pickard at Lay Music Room up in St. Michael. Great guy, been in the music business for a long time, and at the time, I was quitting Bob FM. Okay, so I knew I was going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus, at least for a short period of time. And he
I
was
remember
kind
that
of
Facebook Live.
he was kind of pitching me on this idea of somebody could create an organization, if you will, that was sort of, a conglomerate of country musicians and artists and bands and venues and just kind of radio stations, whatever, in the upper Midwest. And, kind of North Country, association, business association, whatever. And we got together with a bunch of other people and we came up with basically the Midwest chapter of the Midwest, of the CMA at the time.
Okay.
So we were going to call it the Midwest Country Music Association. So Midwest CMA. Okay?
Well, what's his name involved with that?
Ryan.
Ryan's
Ryan's
Ryan
also
Pilgrim.
on the board.
Right.
Yep. And so I reached out to a bunch of people that I, at the time, I'll say trusted or kind of thought that had some skill sets in different areas. My business partner now, Allie Grack, used to be Allie Gilbert, from a marketing perspective. Ryan Pilgrim from a financial perspective. Drew Sherman, who used to be with Made in Dixie, from kind of a band artist perspective. And I'm we're going to start the Midwest CMA. And we got together some other people in a room. And they're like, well, don't you think we should not call it CMA? Because what if the CMA comes after us or whatever? And I'm
Right.
dude, I've done tons of research. There's the Texas Country Music Association. There's Arkansas Country Music Association. There's West Coast Country Music Association. There's all these, geographical areas and then CMA. Okay, I'm they're not coming after us. And frankly, if they do, that means we've made it. Like, literally, I remember sitting in the room telling everybody, you know what? And, of course, this is kind of like sort of that, maybe that pre-daughter, the pre-daughter cocky PT that I feel like I've settled down a little bit, where I'm like, you know what? If they come after us, that means we've made it. Well, turns out 2 years after the fact, we got a cease and desist letter from the CMA.
Really?
We tried to rectify it a little bit, but we decided that not to, and we decided to rebrand us as the Midwest CMO. So now we're the Midwest Country Music Organization, not Association.
We had a
Yeah.
discussion with Ryan Pilgrim.
Yeah.
But can I back up a minute?
Yeah,
You
sure.
said Ryan Pilgrim and his financial expertise. You mean Ryan Pilgrim and his drinking beer expertise?
Yeah. Well,
lattes.
If you want Coors lattes, he's really good at those. No, I mean, Ryan has he's as you guys had him on the show, so he's a very interesting character. I think he has a lot of experience, certainly in country music, which is why I think that would apply and appeal to him. But also what he does for a living is kind of on the financial side of the equation. I think he's sort of, or at least he was at the time, kind of involved in a little bit of what I would consider mergers and acquisitions with bigger companies. And anyway, I'm a big fan of trying to find people to align their passion and purpose, especially when it comes to volunteer and nonprofit stuff and
good people.
Yeah, and good people too.
He's a
that's
good
one
dude.
thing. Yeah, I will say that I've been very blessed in my professional life, over the last 5 to 10 years, to be associated with a lot of people that are very good at what they do and that have maybe that same, you talk about the same genuine authentic driven spirit that is ethically sound and just doing things for the right reasons, you know what I mean? And so I've been very blessed with that, and I'll be the first one to say I'm very grateful with the people that I've been able to surround myself.
You have a good bullshit meter, a bullshit detector.
Thank you. I feel like that's an important thing in my business, and I often describe my people as concentric circles. Okay, so I've got my inner core people, right, and then you kind of go outwards a little bit, and on the air, I say oftentimes hey, your old buddy PT, everybody is friends with PT, right? And that's fine. But you go inner circle, and so when it comes to starting organizations and stuff like that, I really try to stick in those first inner rings, I guess, if you will. You know what I mean?
What time slot do you and Greg have?
Mornings, so 6 a.m. to 10 a.m.
My pet peeve has always been whether I'm traveling and I'm listening to morning shows here. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this or talking about it, but I've always God, these people are not comedians, but they laugh at everything they say.
Sure.
And I'm that's not funny, and you're laughing so loud it's hurting my ears, and I'm turning the knob off. But I'm going to have to tune into you and that jackass friend of yours because he's funny and you're funny. I mean, you guys are just naturally funny and have good sense of humor, I guess is what I'm saying. So I guess I might find some humor. Obviously we got KQ, what's his name? I'm sorry.
Tommy B?
Tommy. He's gonna. I'm sure he's not watching our program, but he'll be
I doubt it. I mean,
he'll be pissed that I forgot.
But I doubt it.
He'll be pissed that I forgot his name.
Well, he would be too. So it's funny you bring that up because when it comes to a comedian, right?
Right.
I don't consider myself a comedian, and when people say I don't even really consider myself funny per se. I think I am, relatively witty. And, I feel like I'm quick-witted and maybe there's things that happen in my life and in existence that are funny because it's just it's, the old fish out of water type of situation, whether it's something I'm doing or saying or whatever. But I think that's important, and that's a good, I agree with you. I think if you're trying to be a comedian, yes, there are people on this earth that are incredibly gifted comedians.
Right.
I'm not one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but but what you're saying is exactly right. And these people that come on radio shows in the mornings, no matter where I am in the United States, I'm like, you're not funny. Say something relevant.
Right.
But guys like you, guys like Shayne, and I think guys like I used to be, we have a good sense of humor.
Right.
I think there's a fine line between trying to be funny and just being fun.
Right.
It's like whenever I'm with you guys, I always have a great time.
Right.
No matter what we're doing,
Right.
we just have fun. I think that's what creates magnetism to your, whether it's your fan base or like you talked about your circles going into Fockers there.
Yeah.
You're outside the circle, Greg.
Yeah. Fokker, you're not in that circle.
So it's like if people just want to be around you because they know that you're just going to be fun.
It's going to be a good time, right? And I think that's the idea. In fact,
it's got to be very appealing for people to watch or listen to you and Greg, because I know Greg and I know you and you two guys together, and I didn't even know that you guys were doing your own show until right now.
We actually changed the when they put that graphic up, we just said mornings got more fun. I think is what we call it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's I think you're absolutely Shayne. That's totally onto something. We look at them and go, people just want to have a good time. Like, they just want to. They're going to work in the morning. Hopefully they like their job. Some of them may not. Maybe they're bummed or whatever. And it's just like, if I can tune in and listen to Thunder and PT and just feel a little bit more positive about whatever it is, the day that we're about to embark on, like that's all we really want to do. And it's a pretty cool thing to be able to let people into our lives.
I can imagine you two guys brighten the morning up. Tomorrow morning, what is today? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to listen to you.
Tune in.
Unfortunately,
I'm on
don't
paternity
lie.
leave.
You don't do mornings.
I'm on paternity leave.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, so I'm taking.
I thought you were looking a little heavy.
Uh-oh.
Could be a girl, could be a boy. We don't know.
Now, you guys have streaming, though. Like, the people can go on demand and check them out on the website, right?
There is some of that stuff. We've got some of the best stuff up there.
Leave.
Look
at that.
Are you
Beautiful
kidding
angel.
me? Is
That's
that
my
your
little daughter. Yeah. So that's Olivia Grace. We call her Liv.
I wish my wife was here right now.
That is the fruit of his loins.
Yeah.
It's a human being.
They didn't think we could do it. We got it. Yeah.
She's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's without question. I mean, fatherhood is it's changed me. Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think like drastically in terms of the person that I was pre my daughter and post, but it has certainly changed or improved my perspective on life more than any other than losing my father to suicide, which eventually we'll get into later on as well. I think those two moments for me are very defining, not from a standpoint of who I am as a person, but in terms of the way that I view the world, and like your perspective. I think perspective, and as being a cancer survivor, I think that's another thing where you can look at that and say, you know what, man, like when you have a scenario where like you can really truly realize like how much tomorrow is not guaranteed,
right?
Like the way you look at the universe, man, is
different.
It's different, and so with my daughter, regardless of what happens in a given day, and of course, like we're kind of coming out of this, this whole COVID and pandemic or whatever deal. It's like regardless of all of that noise and all of the the ups and downs and roller coaster of life, you come home and she looks at you. You know what I mean? And she smiles at you, like, and you just go,
oh, God.
Oh, there it is. Like,
that's life.
Right, that's life right there.
That's perspective right there.
And so I think that's very powerful. And there she is. I think I woke her up from a nap right there. We were on a hike, and I think she was trying to take a nap in the
She's
in
got
the back
that.
of the backpack there. Yeah.
Who dat look in her eye?
So she's great, and being a dad, like I said, is a great thing for me. I've been just loving it, and it's been a very cool ride, and it's only been 8 months or so into it. So I'm very looking forward to the next 20 years.
Wow.
I had an interesting.
That's a big deal.
Had an interesting challenge because Emily and I have 4 kids now.
Yeah, you have a full house, man.
We do. Yeah. So our 12-year-old was from Emily's previous relationships.
Okay.
I've only been in Michael's life since he was 2.
Okay.
So I've been in that dad role with him for 10 years.
By the way, can I just compliment you for having 4 kids? You don't have a lot of like gray hairs going on, like a lot of like.
It's the beard, but the top is
shade. Okay, I was going to say he's hiding it a little bit. I was like, man, this guy for 4 kids. It's like, okay, there you go.
Yeah, in the facial hair, it's definitely
because I'm telling you,
no gray up here at all.
I was a bachelor. I was a single guy for a long time. No issues with grays at all. The minute that the wife and daughter come around, all of a sudden they're just popping out like
woke
crazy.
Up and it was there.
I show her in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I go, Brooke, there you go. That's yours right there. And I point at that little gray hair and I'm like, that was yours right there. So yeah, there she is. We were at Amit's Apple Farm.
Oh yeah,
great place.
Thor's.
Yeah, Thor. The apple cider there. Thor. I wish I was Chris Hemsworth. Thor. That's where the Thor thing comes from. But Amit's Apple Farm was that's actually where I asked her to marry me. So we got engaged there, and I had a guy with whom she really, really loves, a local guy named Dan Rodriguez. He's kind of country folk, I would say. He's not super like mainstream country. Incredibly talented. I would say he's one of the most talented performers that I've ever experienced.
Wow.
Dan Rodriguez. He's incredible. And he's got a song called 25 Years. And it's this idea that basically they're dancing in the kitchen and he wants 25 more years of this like moment or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had him come and surprise her. So he performed. He played that song for us acoustically in a row at Amit's Apple Farm, and I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me.
Did she cry?
Yeah, wow, yeah, she was pretty excited.
Yeah, fantastic.
And then I hit a photographer.
Good
so
on you, bro.
We caught the photos like on the live action or whatever. So
That's
it's pretty
amazing.
Cool, yeah.
Look at you with the big plan.
Yeah, we're trying, man. We're trying.
Yeah,
Problem is, then you got to up it every year. You know, now the birthdays and anniversaries and everything. It's like
I'm in that spot.
Yeah,
I'm in that
yeah.
spot.
Say, Danny,
I took
can
my
you
wife
throw
to
that
Mexico
picture
on a
back
surprise
up?
trip when she graduated, and it's just like, now where do I go from there?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Where do you go? Right. Well, and actually, funny story. But before you go back into this, my wife, she's been married before. Okay, and she's from Georgia originally. And the guy that performed at her wedding was a guy named Zachary Brown. The Zach Brown. So
No
before
way.
he was Zach Brown, he wrote a song and performed at my wife's previous wedding.
You're
so
kidding
now
me.
I'm like, what the hell do I got to do? Do I got to bring freaking Kenny Chesney to my who's going to play at our wedding? Like I got to.
Unbelievable.
Garth,
Zachary
maybe?
Brown.
Zachary Brown. Yeah, she calls him. She's like Zachary Brown.
I
performed
love
his ZDD.
Zach Brown.
Yeah.
Danny, can you bring that picture of his wife up at Amit's Apple Orchard again, please? Now, is this when you proposed to her right here?
No.
at the beer garden.
So it was we did fake engagement photos because we went there in the fall and did we should take pictures type of thing or whatever. And then the following year proposed to her, and then the following year we took some maternity photos there. So Amit's Apple Farm, for whatever reason, has kind of become like one of our spots, I guess.
Yeah.
It never really had anything special ahead of time, just kind of a good location.
We just did an event there, actually, a client appreciation party at Thor's Cider Bar.
Nice.
Because one of the guys I used to be on a team with, but now we just sort of like collaborate.
Okay.
We're independent. His daughter, his oldest daughter, her best friend is dating one of the Amit brothers.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
so it was like, hey,
It's a great place.
we'll get an in. Oh, it's super cool. It's very rustic. They've
Yeah.
got this like Western rustic barnwood feel inside the cider bar area.
I'm real familiar with it. My
The
family.
jalapeno one.
Oh, super good. And I think honestly, there's something to be said for fall traditions and some of that the apple harvest stuff or whatever. And I think Amit's is sort of I feel like people just sort of feel it's like kind of a Minnesota tradition of sorts, or at least
Absolutely.
an apple farm wherever they want to go.
Amit's is huge. You get down around La Crescent, Minnesota, on the Mississippi River, that apple harvest, it's tremendous amounts of apple orchards down there.
Yep.
I turkey hunt and deer hunt down
Nice.
there. Oh, it's a huge deal. Huge deal. The fall.
Right.
Drive down 61. As a matter of fact, when you get down to Lake City and there's the apple orchard, just tons of apple orchards.
Gorgeous fall cruise, by the way, too. By the way,
man.
I would say between, in my opinion, the cruise down like a 61 down that route in the fall, or obviously like a North Shore cruise,
Right.
like between those two,
They're the best.
That's and fall. I love the fall. I know hunting is a big thing in the fall. Obviously, the fall colors. I love the crispness in the air.
Yep.
I'm a big 2 months. The first 2 months of every season, I love. And it's like coming to fall, I'm super excited, and then it gets a little colder. It's like, all right, let's get into winter, and then the snow comes, and you're like, all right, awesome. Now, granted, winter, Minnesota lasts a couple extra months or whatever, but then spring comes around, and you go, all right, great, snow melts and everything, and then pretty soon it's not warm enough to do the summer stuff, so then it's like, I want summer. But then, around this time, like state fair time, I welcome the, for me, I'm not a big, the heat, I'm not huge on that.
Me
you know what I mean?
either.
So, I welcome the fall weather
Me
a lot.
too.
I love it.
Fall's my favorite. Well, obviously,
Hunting.
the hunting season.
Right.
Yeah. Just love that time of year. But I also love that weather, 70 degrees, and the leaves are changing, and the bugs
Do you remember
are
coming
gone.
out of Colorado and filming that?
Yeah.
Just lane of fire coming out of there with all the leaves and stuff.
Oh, it's just gorgeous.
The aspens are on fire.
It's actually, I think that's in the footage of the intro.
I
We're
think it
driving
is,
down a
too.
backcountry road coming out of
yeah.
Colorado. And it's just
Yeah.
like all these leaves and stuff everywhere.
Well, and two, this is something super, super small, but I think a lot of people, maybe this is just a Minnesota or Midwest thing, but there's something to be said in the fall of the year when you can open up your windows
Yes.
at night, you know what I mean? And
Turn
you've got
off the
that
air conditioning.
just the gorgeous like fall, and it gets kind of chilly sometimes, 40s or 50s or whatever.
sleep
in the
better that
fall.
way.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I want it get
Love
nice
it.
and chilly, man. I love
Love
that.
it.
Yeah,
I
it's
absolutely love
you know
it.
what? It's the simple things, boys. Am I right?
Well, let me give you a little bit of like dad advice here.
Yeah, please do.
We're talking about my clan in the house.
Something I can't do.
I accept all advice.
So the thing that I've learned in my run of kids, because like I said, with Michael, I came in and he was already 2, and so I've only been in his life for the 10 years, but I missed all like the firsts. So it wasn't like I was in this mode of regret because he was already through all that.
But
when
do you
Emily
consider
and I
him a big part of your life?
Oh, huge.
Do you know LV Shayne's song "My Boy"? Does that song get to you?
I don't know that song.
Okay, look up. It's a new song. It's a song by LV Shayne.
Okay.
And it is a song about basically like being a bonus dad.
Yeah.
And I can almost tell you right now, it will get you. It'll
It's
get
so
you
good.
Yeah, it's really
It's
good.
so good.
LV
I'll
check
Shayne,
it out.
My
I'll check it
Boy.
out.
Yeah, check it out.
Michael and I have a lot of stuff we bonded over, hunting
Okay.
being one of them. So
Okay.
he's gotten into archery, so we shoot together.
Cool.
I've taken him to some festivals and things like that for archery.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of going down that road. But what I was trying to say is Emily and I's first child together, Grace, who's now
Okay.
7, is our only daughter of the 4 kids. We have 3 boys and a girl. And when Grace was born, I was so wrapped up with work and all that stuff, I wasn't really paying much of attention to her. It was like Emily's job is kids, my job is work. This is before she went to school and got her doctorate and all that.
Okay.
And so she's just stay-at-home mom at that point, and it was early in our marriage. And I remember that I think Grace wasn't even quite, she might have been 6 months or 8 months or something, and I got diagnosed. So then I was on my back, dealing with chemo and all that surgery and all that crap for almost a year. And I missed like all of her firsts, her first word, her first steps, her first teeth, her first haircut, everything. All that stuff. I'm going to get like emotional just talking about it.
Yeah.
So that's like I still have that regret now. So I told myself that's not going to happen again. So Jackson, who's our next child, who's now almost 4, was like, I want to be part of his life and witnessing all those things,
Right.
and making sure that when he gets older, he remembers that I was part of his life and all those things. And of course, Tucker now, who is our guy that's a little over 9 months, and I'm even more so involved with his stuff.
Yep.
It's just like don't take. I mean, people say it. Don't take it for granted. Don't miss the moments or whatever. But that's what I'm trying to echo here. Is just take advantage of every opportunity you have with your little one, because you don't get them back.
Dude, let me tell you something. The Kenny Chesney tune, "Don't Blink."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That song gets. She's only 8 months old, and that song could be playing right now, and I would like be in tears. You know what I mean? And because I think you're absolutely right. Like, time and moments like pass by, and like they do go fast, and it is cliche, but like life rolls pretty quick. And what do the people
Especially
say?
as you get older.
The days go by slow, but the years fly by, or whatever it is. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think that if there's anything, maybe from a silver lining standpoint, when it comes to like COVID and the pandemic, and is if you look at how quickly some of the things that like we maybe took for granted, like were essentially taken away from us, if you will.
Everything.
Which, by the way, includes people and like, even like grieving after a loss. Like, we lost my uncle, not to COVID, here like 3-4 months ago, and we just recently had like a little outdoor gathering.
Celebration
but it's like,
of life or
right,
whatever.
But like you think about it, for 3 or 4 months, we were all like kind of in limbo with like the fact that we weren't able to like grieve this loss. So there's just, if there's anything that we should take from this last 18 months or whatever, to me, it is that very point that you just made, which is that you have to really embrace and live deliberately when it comes to the people that you want to be a part of and have in your life and the things that you're doing, because your time is the only thing that you have. Like, we all have the same, we don't have the same amount of resources, we don't have the same amount of money or whatever, but guess what? We have the same amount of time, and you get to spend that time doing and with the people that you want to be a part of. So you better do it with the people that you care about, because once that time goes by, man, it's all you got. So,
Dropping knowledge bombs over here.
yeah. Well,
Yes.
That was a deep cut.
Yeah.
Deep
drop
cut
it. Yeah,
by
drop it.
PT.
Got it. Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, man, that's
it means
crazy.
a lot, man. It means a lot.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, now that you're in dad mode,
Yeah.
do you find that to be a challenge? Because you do have, I mean, like Tom and I have so many irons in the fire.
Oh yeah, it's real hard.
It's like, how
my
do you keep
wife
up
is
with
very
it?
patient, as Emily as well. You
Same.
mentioned, yeah, it's like literally, my wife is.
Thank you,
is the
Brooke.
same-
Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah, we love you, sweetie. I think I think there's two things to it. I think number one is, again, you just got to be very, very smart about managing said time, right? So, you just got to be very mindful about, like, you look at my calendar, it's relatively slotted out, right? So it's like, hey, man, here's when I've got time to do these things that I'm a part of or whatever. And I think that, that's a big part of it. One thing that I do is my mom comes over to our house and helps 2 days a week. My wife works 3 days a week. But then I have 1 day a week that's my daddy daycare day. So, like, I'm basically, my sole responsibility is to make sure Liv stays alive. You know what I mean? Like, which is a full-time job, by the way, right? Like, it's a big deal, right? And now I've been busted, like every once in a while I'll throw some Zoom calls in there or whatever. And Brooke's like, hey, like, your job is to take care. So, but it's cool because I've sometimes posted, her and I will go down to the dealership at, DOB, Dodge of Burnsville, you know what I mean? I was like taking her to the station one day. I had to cut some commercials, and I'm sitting there cutting an ad, and, Liv's over there in the car seat, like in the studio looking around what the hell's going on, Dad, So, like, I take her with me on daddy daycare days on Wednesdays is our day, and, so that's a very special day for me. Like, I take a lot of pride in being like, hey, man, like, this is the day I get to spend with my daughter. And for the most part, the people that are in my life, they know that, right? Like, I've kind of...
They respect that
boundary.
Like,
I've kind of said, like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm relatively unavailable on Wednesdays. It's like when she goes down for a nap, that's like, I can pop a couple emails out or whatever, but, you're not going to get a lot from me on Wednesdays, at least until Brooke comes home, So the other thing is, I don't
have
really
great
sleep.
Perspective on all of
So
that.
when you stay up till 10 o'clock at night and then you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. I'm not sure how many more years I can do that.
You can't. You can't. I'm past that.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean,
that's this guy. He just can't sleep, though.
Well, I have a hard time
Terrible
sleeping.
sleeper.
But,
he sleeps during the show.
Where's the rim shot? That was beautiful.
As a club disc jockey for so many years, thank you. And, I never got to bed before 3. Now I'm at this stage of my life, for crying out loud, I'm trying diligently to get to bed by midnight.
Sure.
Which a lot of people are thinking, midnight? Well, if you get to bed by 10 or 11, good for you. All my life was up till 3.
We've been delayed, yeah.
I've been and I would get up at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. And I said, you get up that late? And I'm like...
Going to bed at 3 or 4.
Well, I mean, I think that's, and... I mean, Shayne, I know that you, like, have also in the past lived kind of that tricky double life, right? Where you're up doing, and, I think, I'm not sure if you've had him on yet or will have him on, but Jake Nelson's got a tune, Double Life, and it's...
Yeah, he's on our list.
That's awesome. That is a thing that, like, a lot of people that are out chasing dreams and doing their thing, they are living a double life in some capacities. And, like, fortunately for me, I've been able to sort of craft the things that I'm a part of that sort of intertwine together, if that makes sense. So then, even though I've got a lot of irons in the fire, as you say, they do kind of intersect so that, like, by building up one of them or by, maybe making an event for one of them or whatever, I can kind of, like, bolster the other one as well. So it's a little bit of that, that combined aspect, I guess,
You kind of get good at, like, juggling everything,
yeah,
right?
You kind of have to.
The structure is important. A big step for me so a year ago next month in September, I hired Jill, who is our studio manager / talent coordinator.
Yeah.
And so she's now working for my real estate company full-time as my executive assistant.
Nice.
And that just changed the ball game for me because I realized all last year, as busy as I was, trying to keep it all straight was almost impossible. So bringing her in and letting her handle some of that structure for me and saying, here's where you got to be, this is what you got to do.
Now, was that hard for you? Because, being a kind of a self-made guy, right? It's like, I'm a control freak. I'm a, definitely, there you go.
I'm the other corner of that cloth.
Yeah. So, it's really hard to do that, right? It's hard to find the right person or people, and it's hard to ultimately trust them with, whatever it is that you're, like, kind of, tasking them to do. But once you do that and once you, not relieve yourself of those duties, but just sort of change the narrative of how you're involved with it, it can be incredibly powerful.
It's like a half a finger off the reins at a time.
Right, yeah. It's like I hired her a year ago. She's just now doing some things on her own now. It's like, but it's not, I've had situations like that where it's totally not on them. Like Jill obviously crushing it, whatever. It's on you. It's on me. It's on our lack of willingness to like let go in some capacities. You know what I mean? And that's one of the hardest, I think, if I'm being honest with myself, when it comes to leadership specifically, that's one of the hardest things that I've had to learn. And I think the leader that I am today in 2021, compared to the leader that I was 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, I would say that the ability to delegate and the ability to be comfortable with like giving somebody else like, hey, here's kind of like the vision of what I'm kind of, thinking. Like, what can you do with that? And like entrusting them, that's probably the biggest part that I've learned.
It's one of those when you, and TK, you've been down this having trained so many.
I'm listening to you guys and I'm like, okay, been there.
Yeah,
trained DJs all over the country. Doing consultation in restaurants and working with, club managers and bar managers and restaurant managers and their staffs and all that kind of thing. You have to get to a point where you realize I've hired Allie or Ryan or whoever, right? Because of this particular talent they have, and you got to trust that they're going to do their job correctly.
Correct.
Oh, absolutely.
Once you tell them what you need them to do, then you got to like take hands off and say, just do it.
Delegate.
It's hard from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think, because sometimes one of the things that I struggle with quite a bit is the ability to. It's like, I know what I'm doing, so I'll just do it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and write down what I want to do. Like, I'll just do it. Like, it's easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So
Absolutely.
it's like, it's just easier for me to just kind of take care of it. And I think that's where you have to get out. You say, okay, take a couple extra moments and like kind of figure out what it is that you want to accomplish and then be able to like kind of turn that over to them. And that's the part that, when you're moving 100 miles an hour, sometimes is tricky. And I think that's where being able to stop a little bit or to, say slow down. I think just slow down and be more strategic has been very helpful for me in the last probably, like I said, probably 2 to 3 years, I think specifically.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you'll learn to delegate more and you'll learn to relax more. You'll spend more time with your family. It's just a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're at that age where you do that. What are we looking at here?
And like we talked about, we want to. Oh, there's we found that's Dan
proposal.
Rodriguez right there. That's the proposal right there. Dan
It took
Rodriguez.
me forever to find it. That's why
no.
that's why I forgot the rim shot. Sorry.
No, it's no big deal. So at some point in time, like I said, Dan Rodriguez, he's actually, I mean, truth be told, he's not a member of Midwest CMO, and he may be at some point in time. Like I said, his music is probably a little bit more. I'd call it a little more like, if we're using radio stations, he's probably a little more Cities 97 than he is like The Wolf or whatever. He's more like that. I think he was on tour with Tyrone Wells before this, but just uber talented. And like I said, he's got a tune called 25 Years. That's kind of her jam. But he's got several others that are really, really talented. So he's a good guy.
If you're like me and a lot of our listeners right now, you're still probably wondering something about what you said earlier. You're a cancer survivor as well?
I'm not a cancer survivor.
Matt Gronke.
Yeah, Matt Gronke, yep.
I got you. I thought you said you were as well.
Nope, yeah. So I know that Shayne and Matt share that commonality. And even though I don't share that, I remember talking to, well, actually both Shayne and Matt, but like...
The first award show.
Yeah, I mean, like having those conversations and those really kind of like, pretty serious conversations about like, hey man, like how are you doing? You know what I mean? And I think that... I'm in the mental health space, specifically with LIVIN and whatnot, and I think I've tried to be more cognizant
This
about
is him
like
teeing me up, by the way.
about asking people, like, hey man, like how are you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think we say how are you doing in a very like just in passing.
Casual.
It's like it's just very casual, but and I had some really good conversations, like I said, with both you and Matt about. Sharing that journey a little bit of what it's like, and I hope like hell I don't have to experience that journey. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And or I hope like hell my dad did beat cancer at one point in time. So I mean I've experienced it relatively closely, but not me personally. And like I said, I hope like hell I don't have to experience that. I would love to only be able to. Sympathize as best I can with your situation. Yeah, be supportive, you know what I mean, and whatever that is. And I think when you talk to someone, you say, what is it that I can do to be supportive of you in your journey, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, now that he put the ball on the tee, I'm going to go ahead and whack that thing out of the park, because when we come back from our break, we are going to get right into this other project that you've got going, speaking directly to mental health awareness.
Kind of a small project.
Suicide prevention. Yeah, tiny project. We've hinted at it a couple times with the music festival next month, TK. So that's a tie-in to that. So when we come back from break, we are going to dive right into LIVIN Foundation and let PT tell us about how that got started and what it means to him, his experience that sort of like created that, what is now a monster here locally. I mean, I have seen LIVIN stickers all over the country, driving around on the back of people's vehicles.
Over.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. Yeah,
It is powerful.
It's something that there's not a lot of things that get me speechless per se, but like seeing the growth and development of the LIVIN movement and some of the stories that have subsequently come out of that. Yeah, it's a chills thing for me for sure. Yeah,
I've got a tear shed moment I'm going to share when we come back from the other side of this, and
I can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, folks, before we let you get out of here, because we are going to take a little break because we got to keep the lights on around here, let the sponsors get their bit in the middle of this conversation with PT. We do want to ask you to go ahead and pinwheel that like button. Make sure that you're subscribing and that you're sharing all this content, all the different platforms. Obviously, we're primarily on YouTube, Spotify, and let's see here. So YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and all the audio platforms available out there. You can go to our link tree, and you'll get all the different options for where you can listen to or watch this show. But do us a favor and do that right now, and then when we come back from the break, we're going to have some great content here with PT. We'll see you in a minute. Boots and Backstraps is proudly brought to you by Homes by Shayne. Make your move with the Homes by Shayne team. Commitment to community and unparalleled customer service are the foundation of this RE/MAX Results referral-based business. Their driven team of experts communicate with their clients every step of the way, ensuring a memorable experience from the first conversation through your closing day. Go to homesbyshayne.com. Let's get you home. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Boots and Backstraps podcast. Sorry.
We've been drinking.
I was just thinking about the conversation we were having a second ago, and it distracted me. So welcome back to the Boots and Backstraps podcast. We, of course, still have PT in studio. He has agreed to graciously stick around and regale us with more stories. As we promised, we will get into the LIVIN Foundation and all things tied to that, among other things, with this second half of the show. But before we get to that, TK, it's time for us to do your segment.
Oh, we're going to do that now?
Yeah.
PT, I'm telling you, I'm just fascinated. I knew you when you were quite younger, but, man, you've become so articulate, and your voice is wonderful for radio. And
thanks,
you
man.
And I just can't compliment you enough. I mean, and the birth of your new daughter, my gosh.
Pretty cool.
So many great things have been
much.
happening in your life. I'm very impressed and very happy for you. And before we do that, I want to ask him a question.
Go.
What's the deal with Mark Paul?
Mark Paul, my cousin. Yeah. So, I guess not really a deal with him, except for the fact that
Well, there's a deal with him.
Yeah. Well, so I would say he was a cousin of mine, several years older than I was. So, like growing up, we would have family functions, and he wasn't always at the family functions because he had a couple. There was some different scenarios with like moms and dads and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But every time he was there, like it was like an awesome thing to me. So I was growing up as like an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, and being like, "Oh man, Mark Paul was there, whatever." Like my cousin. And so now I've like kind of connected with him a little bit recently, and it's hilarious because he laughs at me. Like I say, "Oh my God, I was so excited when you'd be at family functions." He's like, "Dude, the fact that you were looking up to me like that was just ridiculous."
It is ridiculous because he is not worthy looking up to.
He's a great guy, though. Good dude. And I just got a chance to meet his daughter at an event recently and his wife as well, which was cool.
Yeah.
So
I've known Mark for many, many years.
That's awesome.
We were talking. I was over at Gander World, and he said, he's been watching the podcast. He says, "Well, do you know my cousin PT?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, he's going to be on the show, I think, the 25th. This is a couple weeks ago."
Awesome.
Really? And he's like, "Yeah." I've had so much fun with Mark.
Good dude.
I needle him a lot, him and his organization, and he's worthy of a lot of grief.
Yeah. I'm hopeful to, at some point in time when I can afford it, purchase some type of a, travel trailer / camper unit from him or something that he's connected to, because the camping bug has definitely gotten into like my family specifically with my wife and my daughter. We've kind of done that not only this summer but before, and I just love it. And you can call it glamping, maybe, I guess, because you're doing the travel trailer and all that kind of stuff. But we've got tents as well. But I'm not gonna tent with an 8-month-old. Okay, like I'm just not.
Don't do it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Right.
If you were tuned in earlier, you saw the camper that Shayne and I bought for heading out west.
I love it.
And putting in the woods of Wisconsin. So it was either that or one that Mark had for me for $20,000, or the $2,000 one, and a little effort in fixing it up a little bit more. And I guess we just chose to go with the $2,000 one.
Well, we've got some ingenuity and a little elbow grease.
Yeah.
It's worth an extra $0, I'm
And
sure.
we don't care that it's,
to be honest,
as Danny mentioned so eloquently, the upholstery doesn't bother us. So.
No. Hey, man, for a hunting shack and whatever like you're doing, look,
it's super Gucci,
you got
bro.
what you need, man.
I've just
that's
been
about
waiting.
as bougie as you need to be right there. Yeah.
I've been waiting through this whole podcast to throw Mark's name out there because
good guy.
He's a great guy, and I'm just going to end this conversation before I get a little too carried away.
Well, you got to get carried away with some Wheat Fest stories, I hear. You got
we have some celebrity photos here, and he hasn't seen him, and we haven't seen him.
Right, we haven't either. I'm super excited to see who it is.
Danny's the only one that knows what they are, but just so that the viewing or listening audience, now the ones that are listening on one of our audio-only platforms will not obviously see these photos, but we will say the names as we disclose them. But if you're on the one of the viewing platforms, you'll get to see the photos here as we reveal them to TK. And I'm actually going to show them to PT first.
Nice.
These this is kind of a fun segment because for the last
Tanya Tucker, and this is because he brought her up last week when we filmed.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure Danny was like, okay, there's got to be a Tanya Tucker story here.
Tanya Tucker.
I'm sure there is, and I want to hear it.
She's a hoot, man. She just had, if you've been to the Wee Fest, have you not?
Oh, I have, just once.
You ever seen the Walk of Fame?
Yeah.
Well, all the artists would put their hands in cement and sign it. And, well, she just got new taters. I knew you'd like that one.
So she didn't want the fries; she wanted the burger with the taters.
So instead of putting her hands, she put
tater tots, not fries.
put her boobs in the cement and signed her name. And I can tell you a story. A guy that I used to live in Aspen with, and he was pretty much my best friend for many, many years through the 70s and up until. Anyway, he was at the Wee Fest with her, and we were doing photo shoots, and I do a lot of photo shoots with different artists, and I could hear Peter on the other side of her. I said to her, do you mind if we give you a kiss on the cheek? She says, yeah, go. Give me. So Peter and I are kissing her on the cheek.
Nice.
And I have that photo somewhere. And then I hear Peter on the other side. Do you mind if we stick our tongues in your ear? And she says, come on, boys. She wasn't going to back down from nothing.
No,
I'm
not at
over
all.
there laughing. And
She came to punch in.
Yeah.
there's, she's a legend. She's a legend. And, who told us great
Her
stories?
name is in how many songs?
Yeah. Who told us great stories about her was Heidi from Hitchville.
Right.
Heidi actually lived with her, and
PT might know her as well.
I do. I know.
Heidi and I are great friends, and living
Do you
that
know?
life.
Do you know the backstory with TK and Heidi?
I do not.
You tell them.
That'd be good.
You
I
gotta
don't
tell
think
them.
so. My wife watches some of these.
Heidi was his last girlfriend before he married Lynn.
No way.
Yeah.
You dated Heidi from Hitchville. Good for you.
So Heidi's going to say, well, that wasn't really the way it went. And I'm going to just end that right there.
I love it.
So anyway, Tanya Tucker, man, total legend. But, Heidi did give us a little more insight into her personal life.
She did.
And, I'm sure PT, that a lot of these celebrities, when they're out on stage, life is great, man. That's what they live for. But
Sure.
a lot of quiet, and, she's not married and doesn't have children, and kind of like my cousin that just passed. A lot of lonely time.
Yeah.
And, but Tanya Tucker, man, that great gravelly voice, Delta Dawn, and then all of a sudden, when we had her at the Wee Fest last, I said, well, you are on a new hit parade. When I brought her out Flowers,
Yeah.
she just said hit after hit. Bend with the Wind, that's not the correct name, but when the tree bends. She had like 5 hits in a row, really late in her career, and it was in the 90s. And it was just amazing. It was so cool for her. Kind of like John Anderson's rebirth.
Yeah.
When he had the resurgence of all these big hits. But just, she's country music. I mean, is she in the Hall? She's got to be in the Hall of Fame by now.
She has to be.
If
she's in the Opry for sure.
I'd say she's very much a legend when it comes to country music. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So anyway, she's a pretty fun and
Do you want to stick your tongue in her ear?
she's a wild
says
child.
Yes.
She does say yes.
She said yeah.
Ready for round 2?
Ooh. Oh, nice. Big Kenny.
Yeah.
John Rich.
Love
Big and
Big
Rich.
and Rich. Well, when it comes to
I
the
want a couple guys that
segments,
like the whiskey and the bourbon and stuff like that.
People ask me how the entertainer. Well, as you probably know, PT, about 99% of them are the greatest people you'll ever meet in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only just a few that
Look at the baby
really
faces on those guys, too.
really aren't that sociable or kind or whatever. And then you can give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they had a bad day, like the female entertainer we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's got nice stems.
Taters.
Well, these guys went into the campgrounds. I'll never forget being in a golf cart with these guys going through the campgrounds. And I don't know, this isn't NBC or CBS or ABC. The girls were going crazy. I mean, they're throwing their tops off and dropping their drawers. And I mean, I can't imagine, other than a few years at the Hog's Breath, living that life where the women are just, but they're just, musical geniuses, both of them.
Talented.
Yeah.
Rich is certainly a businessman,
John Rich.
business-oriented
Oh, yeah,
guy.
Well, he won The Apprentice, didn't he?
Yeah.
He actually won it, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just a smart guy. And
He's very politically
Kenny's
savvy,
more of
too.
a hippie and just living life and loving it, but
Yeah.
a talented musician. And who doesn't love Big and Rich? I mean,
Yeah.
their hits, their songs. Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I got a
that was
good Big
huge
and
one.
Rich story for you guys.
Well, good. Let's hear it.
I'd say hit us with that.
So when Emily and I got married, it's no probably secret to most of the people out there that know us, but we're proud practicing Catholics. So we got married in the church. And one of the sort of like pre-ceremony meetings that we had with our priest, he was talking to us about our music because they had a music director there that we had to meet with and talk about the hymns and things like that that were going to be part of the ceremony. And he was very specific about saying you can't have any secular music in the church. You just can't. It's a rule, as you know, Tom. Tom's very tied into the especially the local Catholic church. One of his uncles is a bigwig, Father Wilsbacher.
Father Wilsbacher.
So anyway, their pianist there is a nationally world renowned. His name is Stephen C. Anderson.
Okay.
And he's incredibly talented pianist, and he's a very good friend of my wife's family. And so we met with him because he was going to be playing in the ceremony, and so he had kind of some direction from the musical director from the church. But then he met with us, and he was just like, let's talk about what you want to do. And we're like, well, we're huge country music fans.
Yeah.
And Father said we can't have any country, and he was like, what songs do you want? And so Lost in This Moment was one of the ones that we really wanted.
Definitely, I would go that one for sure.
And he was like, just tell me what they are. And we're like, okay. So we gave him a list of like 4 or 5 of our really favorite big-time country songs that we thought would be cool to be part of the ceremony. And you would not believe how he found a way to he's playing something, Catholic, and then all of a sudden, no, 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 it just comes out. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would say that most Catholic
That's
churches
awesome.
these days allow secular music.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
We had some in Michigan. And
I thought you were going to say that he played Lost in This Moment, and nobody knew the difference. Like the pastor was like, just assuming it was like a Catholic.
How
That's
would you
exactly
know
what
that?
happened.
Yeah, basically just played it.
No,
Yeah.
and we noticed it because we know the music.
Yeah,
and like
but-
our bridal party, we're like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
But like nobody from the church said anything to us.
Right.
Because they didn't notice. He's like in the middle of playing one of the traditional church songs, and then all of a sudden he just starts mixing in some George Strait.
Brilliant, yeah.
And nobody noticed.
Which one? Cross My Heart?
No,
Carrying
it
Your
was,
Love With Me, or?
no. Dang it. Get Carried Away.
Get Carried Away. Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. George Strait's got a bunch. I mean, Big and Rich, incredible performers, and just a lot of fun at their, we talked about fun in the first segment. I mean, like, just there's got a couple guys that just go on stage and just have a blast, like that's what they do.
And they dragged, dragged might be the wrong word, but Cowboy Troy been at all of their shows for I don't know how many years.
What a good dude,
and he was just on the side of the stage hanging out with us, doing shots and having a ball. And
he's
then
a
he'd
huge
go out and
human
do his,
being.
Yeah.
Huh?
He's
Yeah,
huge.
he's a great big guy.
Made him a deal.
And
So it was cool, TK, that they, like so many, like Sugarland and stuff like that, and they kind of went their own directions for a minute, then they came back together.
Yeah.
They're so much better together.
well,
Just like Jennifer and
we've
Christian,
talked
so much
about
better
this
together.
before. In the world of any music, whether it's rock and roll or any kind of music, you have a formula that made you successful.
Yeah.
You break that formula in any way, shape, or form, all of a sudden, here, Brooks and Dunn, you name it. Whatever it took to get you there, all the bands that have broken up through history, you got to stick with that formula because that's what got you there. And any form of that formula ain't going to work.
Put the ego aside, figure it out.
It's a great point. I would be willing to bet that the percentages of like bands or duos or whatever that like were a thing and broke up and whatever, it's got to be like 90-10 in terms of not working out versus working out. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to think of like any on top of my head, like maybe Justin Timberlake with NSYNC or something like that. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's a solo thing like that, or Michael Jackson with the Jackson 5, and this is obviously not country.
Peter
music,
Cetera, Glenn Fry. There's a few that have had some success
right?
solo,
but like you're right
many.
for the most part. I mean, like these are like the exceptions to the rule and not the norm. There's no doubt.
Yeah, you got to stick with that form. I mean, obviously, Beyonce was
Ozzy.
a huge.
I mean, Black Sabbath was awesome, but Ozzy
Oz-
was a monster.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I just got a chance to see that Green Day show earlier this week.
You did?
The Green Day Fall Out Boy Weezer bit.
Where did they play?
At Target Field.
Okay.
And, like, I'll be honest with you, man. Like, I went to that concert thinking it was just going to be a fun time with my brother. And it's like, I know some Green Day tunes or whatever. I think I knew, like, one Fall Out Boy tune.
You know some Weezer.
I knew some Weezer, but the thing is, we didn't even get there in time. We got there like 7:30, and Weezer was already done. We thought I was going to go Fall Out Boy, Weezer, Green Day, and it went Weezer, Fall Out Boy, Green Day. So we like missed Weezer, but whatever. It was a great show, but we were laughing because Green Day was playing a couple of tunes where like they must have been the newer stuff where they were kind of like feel good about life and stuff like that. And my brother and I were like, no,
woke?
No, we want the old school, like, teenage angst, like, I'm mad at my parents, Green Day.
Yes.
Like, that's what we're here for,
That's what made them huge.
Right. There was so much, there was, like, a lot of, like, teenage anger in the audience, except for the teenagers were now,
With their parents.
Yeah, like, they're now, like, 30 or 40 years old. Which is super weird, because they're there with their kids. So.
Or with their kids, yeah.
But it was a fun show, but it, like...
The kids have the colored hair and the T-shirts.
Right, yeah, it's like mom and dad are like, no, don't color your hair. It's like, oh, that was you like 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I've seen the photos, Dad.
Yeah, like literally, Dad. Some dad's got a visor on. He's rocking out to Green Day, and I'm like, dude, look at this guy. Look at this.
He's wearing flip-flops with socks.
Right, seriously. He's got Crocs and socks and a friggin' visor, and he's...
Socks.
All right, well, let's get back to PT here.
Yeah.
So we hinted before the break, TK, about the other projects that he's got going in, and I know we talked a little bit on the break about some of that stuff, and so I'm super excited to actually let PT get into this passion that he has about mental health awareness, suicide prevention, that kind of thing.
Coming from a crazy, working with another crazy.
Yeah.
Hanging out with a couple crazies.
Sure. Yeah. It's more common than we think, I think,
So let's go back to where the sort of like inspiration for this foundation, because obviously it's wildly popular, so I want to start there. Let's start with the inspiration.
Sure. So, certainly appreciate that it's wildly popular. I think we never went into it thinking that it was, all about being popular. It was about spreading awareness and starting a movement, really. It kind of goes, my buddy and I in college would talk about like this idea of like living, and we talked about Matthew McConaughey earlier and living and like LIVIN and kind of like, all right, and the whole deal. But this living idea was sort of this thought process where like, again, you get an opportunity every single day to like be the best version of yourself. So make sure that whatever you're doing, like you're finding that, right? Which for some people is music. Other people it's, cars. Other people it's camping. For some people it's running. It might be music, like whatever it is.
Naps
Naps might be living for you, And so it's like, we used to call each other and be like, hey man, like, what'd you do to live today? And it was like, I worked hard on exam, or I called my folks to connect with them or whatever. And that was kind of living to us. And it never really meant anything in terms of mental health until 2013 rolled around, and I lost my father to suicide, okay? And he was and really still is like the most important, influential person in my life. And maybe like a lot of kids, looking up to their dad and thinking that he is and was an element of Superman, and to have that happen, to him was, as I mentioned before in the first segment, like it doesn't define who I am. Like I don't introduce myself as like, hey, I'm PT, I lost my dad to suicide. But like that moment and that time in my life really helped to shape my perspective, in like very more than anything else. Okay. And like the reason that LIVIN came about is because subsequently I battled myself after losing my father. Okay. So like, I tried to find in my life where I had my purpose and everything, and I had some pretty dark days. Like I think when you lose somebody or you go through, we talked about a cancer battle or like whatever it is that you might go through in this life, like you have these times that are very tricky, right? And like I think for me it was finding some kind of peace with like talking about it that ultimately got me out of that. And I remember I was on Bob FM and I ramped up a Vince Gill record, Go Rest High on That Mountain, and I dedicated it to my dad. And I really started like talking about like my loss with my father and like how I had subsequently battled with it and, was trying to get better and whatever. And I was at an event after that and a guy came up to me and he said, hey, can I ask you a question? Like, which one of the DJs at your station, like, talks about losing someone to suicide? And I said, that's me. And he said, I just want to thank you for doing that because every time you talk about that on the air, it gives me some strength and some comfort that I'm not alone. And it turns out he had lost his niece to suicide, like, earlier that year. And so, needless to say, like, I talked to him and, kind of like hugged him a little bit, said thank him for sharing that story. And I kind of left that moment thinking to myself,
that's
like,
no small deal for him to come up and share that
right,
with you.
like this is a big deal, like, kind of a total strangers, right? Like we didn't know each other from Adam, you know what I mean? Right. And so, like for us to all of a sudden be having this conversation about an incredibly deep topic, you know what I mean? An incredibly, powerful moment. And
does it get deeper than that?
No,
I don't think so.
For him to say to me, like, thank you for like sharing your story and talking about this, like I kind of. All of a sudden, it hit me that like we need to be more willing to have these conversations, like these difficult conversations, or just conversations about our own mental wellness to prevent suicide. I think to make it more okay to like have these conversations. One of the things that we've talked recently with LIVIN is that it's funny. You and I can run into somebody in an elevator, right, and have a 20-minute conversation about the weather. Right? But we can't talk to our friends and family about like how we're doing mentally, right? And it's weird. It's so weird, isn't it? Like how backwards is that, right? So like I think we're setting out to change that. And so when LIVIN was sort of created through that, we just basically were like, we're going to put LIVIN and specifically hashtag LIVIN on, at the time it was shirts and hats and bracelets or whatever. We're just going to like start conversations in everyday life about our own mental wellness and with the hopes of, again, starting conversations in order to reduce the stigma. And then we say, get busy living, which is like our mantra, like get out there and like get deliberate about your life and get deliberate about talking and sharing your story and about listening to others as well. And subsequently, like you said, we've fortunately had a lot of, I think it's resonated with people quite a bit because you start having these conversations. You don't have to go very far. Much like cancer, right? You don't have to go very far to start finding other people that have been affected either by suicide or mental illness. I mean, they say the statistics are like 1 in 5 people will battle a mental illness in their life, right?
Amazing.
So you think about, you don't have to go very far for that. So all of a sudden you got this like swell of people going, God, that story really speaks to me, and how can I be a part of that movement, and how can I tell my story, and how can I listen to others telling their story? And basically the rest is history. And now we've started a camp for families that have been affected by suicide and lost somebody. We've got our music festival, kind of a gathering of people, kind of sharing these stories. I've spoken at, numerous high schools and other schools and community events, kind of sharing my story. And I've just had a lot of opportunities as a platform now to like start that dialogue. And again, that start that conversation. So we're kind of an advocacy organization. We're like the Pink of breast cancer. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing inherently cool about breast cancer, right? But people get together at a breast cancer event and everybody's kind of in pink, and there's this community that's created. You know what I mean? Through the color pink, and we're like, hey, you're part of this journey, and you're a survivor, and we beat this together. And I think that's what LIVIN is. I might not wear a shirt that says I lost my dad to suicide, but I'll wear a LIVIN shirt, with pride. And when people see that, they go, hey man, like I'm part of that story too, or like, let me tell you my story. You know what I mean?
So when people see you wearing, or somebody wearing a shirt that says LIVIN,
yep.
What do they? Does it resonate? Do they know what they're seeing? I mean, does it explain to them?
I think, I hope so.
I mean, as you sitting here telling me, I get it.
Yep.
And I love it. I think it's just the greatest thing in the world.
It's very popular, especially in this like country scene locally, because everybody knows who he is. And so with him talking about this movement, I like to call it a movement because it is a movement. It's very
much a movement. Absolutely. Yep. Very much.
And so, like I said, we see decals because they have, bumper stickers or window stickers or things like that. Mm-hmm. And you see them everywhere. So it's like people are conscious of it now. And I was actually going to transition out of that, if you don't mind, TK.
Go ahead.
Because I mentioned before the break this story that I have, this emotional story I have.
Yeah.
Because I lost a friend of mine, well, not just a friend of mine, but a lot of people that are Rowdy Cowboy Show people. There was a guy, very close friend of mine back in, I think it was 2012, 2013, 2012, I think it was. His name was Richard Wiles, and Cowboy Rich, everybody called him Cowboy Rich. Really good friend of mine. We actually were like 5 seconds away from moving in together. We were looking at places and all that stuff, and he was dating this gal and kind of got in his head and whatever, so he committed suicide. Mm-hmm. A mutual friend of ours found him at his house because he wasn't responding to anybody's messages and things like that. But I was like rocked for a long, still now I think about him on the regular because he just left this print, like a permanent timestamp on my life that I'm never going to forget. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way about him. And so anyway, when I think it was like 4 years ago, and you did, and it was an outdoor event, and Jake Nelson was playing, and you guys did this balloon release where he was singing his song, You Are Not Alone, which was dedicated to suicide prevention and mental health awareness. Here we go. Here's the balloon release. Yeah. So he's singing this hit song that he had, talking about this very subject, and PT was on stage with a mic talking to the crowd, and then the balloons went, and I literally cried watching this the first time.
Yeah.
Just open, like ugly heave cry, because I was just like thinking about Rich and thinking about other family and friends and like all these people, like you said, you don't have to go far, and you're just running into all these people like a pinball that have experienced this issue in their life.
Yep.
Just amazing.
And
can you find that video, Danny?
I'm certainly sorry for your loss. Jake's song, You're Not Alone, he's performed that at Stomp Out Suicide. He tells the story, and I don't want to take his thunder if and when you guys have him on the show or whatever, but that song, means a lot to him because it has saved lives. It literally has. Like, people listen to that song and have, like, made decisions differently based on, that song. And I think that, people will say things like, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. That's a sort of I don't want to say like a buzzword or a cliche that people will use in those ranks. But I think the part of it that I
almost kills more people than cancer.
It's a big,
it's an epidemic.
It's a big thing. It's a
horrible.
big thing. And I think that, we're going to see, unfortunately, a lot of people struggling post-pandemic because of the fact that, when you take people almost to a certain degree, like people's sole purpose for like life, or if they've been in the restaurant business for 30 years and all of a sudden they can't do that anymore, it's like, it's a big part of that. You know what I mean? And so I think that we're going to be dealing with some elements of mental illness, for a while now. And I think that, what I always talk about is I don't want to remember somebody for how they died. I want to remember somebody for how they lived. So your friend, and I think that's where LIVIN is such hopefully a positive spin on the topic, because, if somebody passes away due to, insert whatever cause here, right? a car accident or, cancer, as you mentioned, whatever, like we're like, oh, too bad, whatever. But it's like if there's this perceived choice, like with suicide, like it's like that becomes their, like this dark cloud, like that's their legacy. Whereas I choose to believe that person's legacy is much greater than that.
Right.
And so like if we can remember their story for how they lived, and I think that's where LIVIN comes from, and hopefully take elements of their legacy and bring it with us. And now you can, sort of maybe take, Cam, I think all the time, like I try to live, like Paul Thomas. So my dad's name was Thomas. So when I kind of took Paul Thomas and PT, in a way, like I created and I embodied a lot of who my dad was in me. But I also think that it's deliberately, like LIVIN is not, it's not my story, right? It immediately becomes your story. Does that make sense? And I think that when you talk about it, Shayne, as being a movement, like if I were to speak on it like objectively, I think that's why it's one of the reasons why people resonate with it so much, because it's like it's a simple concept, it's a positive, inspirational concept on a very difficult topic, but most importantly, when you see that, you can reflect on it how it pertains to your life, not my life. It doesn't have to do anything to do with my dad. Like, yeah, my dad, and subsequently, like, yeah, I started it, but the movement is alive and well because of people embodying their own stories and putting their own passion and their own struggles and, whatever, like even overcoming. Like there's people like survivors that have overcome some incredibly powerful things that are part of the movement. And so it really, it's really tough for me sometimes to share stories, but I'll share one. So I've spoken a lot, as I mentioned, in like community events and like high schools and stuff like that. And I spoke at a high school one time, and they always send to me like, or they're not always, but sometimes they send like thank you notes afterwards. Okay.
Right.
And I don't have it with me right now, but I carry it in my bag. One of the thank you notes said, "Dear PT, thanks for talking about LIVIN in our class. It changed the way that I view life." And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it said, I changed my mind about my suicide, and I went home and I ripped up my goodbye notes. It turns out this person, this young girl, was actually planning to take her life prior to me coming in and talking to the school. And she says, you talked about how, because I always say, like, if we could just change one life today, like just if one life, like if every day, it's like if we could just affect one person and like have one family like not have to go through what we've had to go through, like that would be a pretty powerful thing. And she said, like, I'm telling you today that you affected my life, and I want to thank you or whatever. And like I think to myself, like I'll never forget reading that note and just thinking like how full circle like the whole movement had come, and that like maybe in some way my father like hadn't died in vain. And then like I always kind of imagine like 10 years from now, like some girl comes up to me at like, like a Panera Bread or something like that, and it's like, hey, you're PT and you don't know who I am, but 10 years ago I was in a bad spot and you walked into my room and like changed my life forever. And by the way, here's my husband and my kids or whatever.
Right.
Like that would be the moment that would probably do it for me.
You probably are going to have lots of those moments, and then a lot of them you'll never hear about. Or you'll never know they happen. But
just know they are happening, brother.
Well, I hope so. I mean, we hope so and we know so. And it's, as I mentioned, it's one of the most, to hear something like that from somebody,
humbling.
It's
humbling.
Yeah, very humbling. And I think
made
that's
it all worthwhile, all your effort, everything. I mean, that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. And so answer a question for me. If there's a young person that may be listening to us and somebody's contemplating suicide, is there a number from LIVIN that they can call, or is this, how does it work?
Sure.
Like how does it actually function because it's an epidemic, and if these kids only knew the things that we knew, and certainly me because I'm so much older than you guys are, that these bad times we go through, they build character, and they're only a bad time for a time, and they're not forever.
Yeah.
And when you break up with a boyfriend, there's a lot of guys out there. Don't kill yourself because you broke up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's just a blink of an eye.
It's a speed bump and a very long road.
Yep.
And a very good analogy, but how can, if there's kids that are contemplating this, because as I said, and as you know, it's an epidemic in the schools these days, and they're killing themselves for the stupidest reasons. And it's like, my God, it's just a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And there's other boyfriends, and it's just a sad time for just a small period of time.
Yep.
And you'll have joy for the rest of your life. Don't kill yourself.
Well, and the online bullying thing is a big, within schools. I think there's probably two. I think young people often in like the teens and tweens years, and it, like to your point about breaking your heart, it's like you hear about some of these scenarios where kids, and you're losing a kid to suicide at an age 10, 11 years old, where it's like, how are they even how is that even in their vocabulary, for crying out loud? And then you also see actually older men is actually a big kind of a big category. I would say a couple of years ago we had some really big struggles with farmers and whatnot. Struggling kind of in that landscape. So first of all, livinfoundation.org, we've got a bunch of resources on our website that people can reach out to and connect with. There's definitely the National Suicide Hotline. There's a text number that people can reach out to now that, texting is becoming more common, I think more so than even, calling somebody. I think so that the number one thing I always tell people is there's absolutely resources out there. Now, I will say that a lot of people that are trying to get resources and trying to get into hospitals or into clinics or whatever are having a really hard time doing so. Like people that need a lot of help, like beds are literally, full, and places to get a clinic visit or whatever are a long time away, but there definitely are places out there, resources that you can help. And I think LIVIN tries to be, we don't really provide anything per se ourselves. We try to be a little more of a traffic cop. It's like, hey, what kind of help do you need? And we try to direct you to that capacity. I think the other thing that's important to note is hopefully LIVIN can, maybe there's people that are like in a really, really dire spot, and that's where you maybe need that national hotline, or you need direct service, like hospitalization, like right now, right? Mm-hmm. But I think LIVIN actually exists and really can hopefully do as much help and work sort of like before that even becomes a thing. You know what I mean? Like before, if you look at like a scale of like mental illness, and it's like, if this is quote unquote normal, which doesn't really exist, but it's like normal, and this is like, hey, you need immediate help tomorrow. It's like, I think we need to live like kind of in the middle ground where it's like before people get to a really tough spot, let's make sure that they realize that, hey, man, open up to your friends, open up to your family, talk to a buddy, talk to a stranger, and then be willing to listen to a stranger, and be a little bit more educated as it pertains to some of these, maybe some warning signs and whatnot. And I think that if we can, with LIVIN, do a better job in the general population, I'll say, and again, I'm using some terms that I don't want to generalize anything, and just kind of keep people moving towards towards
away from the in case of emergency
right, exactly.
break glass.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think LIVIN is necessarily designed as a fire extinguisher. Like, we're on fire. We're more of like a, we're more of an educational tool and more of an advocacy organization as much as possible. So, but yeah, I mean, what's ironic is, you think of like Jake's Tune and a lot of other music out there, like, you're not alone. Like, that's the messaging. Like, I think there's a lot of,
it feels lonely in that
exactly.
moment.
When you're like depression and a lot of mental illness, you think of like what correlates with that, and it's loneliness, it's isolation, it's darkness. It's whatever,
you hit on a word that is so huge, and because I mentor at my church and I mentor at the prison, and I didn't know my wife is so happy that I became a mentor, because there's an educational tool that they give you, and it's all about listening.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but I was never taught anything in school. We had public speaking, we had different classes, but there was never a class on listening. And it's changed my life so much more than anything else that I can think of in recent history. But if we say anything that means anything today on this podcast, if the people listening would choose to just listen to other people, hear what they're saying, not just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Amen.
But listen to it. It means so much to the person that maybe has a problem, or maybe they don't know, they're not trying to tell you about a problem, but just listen.
Yeah.
Listen to people and listen to their stories, and be an edifier, build them up. And God dang it, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little emotional about it because I've seen it so much in the prisons and at church and with young kids. Just listen to their story. Yeah. Listen to what they have to say. You don't need to interject your thoughts and your feelings. Listen to what they have to say.
It's not about you, you asshole.
Yeah. Let's be honest. There's a lot of struggles or whatever. And I appreciate the opportunity, the platform to speak on it. Hopefully this isn't like the most, down podcast or whatever you guys have done or whatever. If anything, you want it to be positive.
Extremely exciting.
It needs to be said.
It's a tough thing. And I think that, if anything, maybe that's the transition to when we talk about like, what is LIVIN Music Festival? And it's the idea is like, you know what? Like, let's not make it about how, these people died, or let's not make it about drab or depression or whatever. Let's be comfortable. Let's be so comfortable that we can talk about depression that we're going to have a damn festival to like talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, why not? Like, we're going to get on the damn mountaintops and be like, this is a thing. And, like, we're going to tell everybody as loud and proud as we possibly can that, like, we're all a part of this movement, and we don't really care who knows about it. You know what I mean? We don't
PT wearing his Bud cape, his Bud Light cape.
Bud Light cape, yeah.
Yeah. Do we have some audio for that, Danny?
There's some ribs there. I'm going. When is this?
ERX Motor Park.
I know where that is. North of Elk River on 69. I've driven by there. I don't know that I could drive straight to it.
Get busy, LIVIN Music Festival. Make some noise and wave a little bit.
But when you release this balloon, not only send a message to those that you love, but please let go of the sadness and the frustration and the guilt that comes with it. Let's focus on the positives and the legacy, and the positive legacy that those people have.
Not a dry eye in that crowd.
And the balloons are going up for who or for why?
Usually people will write on the balloon,
someone
a message
lost.
Or someone they've lost or whatever, a struggle they've had. And so, yeah, that's the, like, kind of the daytime portion of it. And so, yeah, we've tried to take this this movement and, it's like, you think about like what makes a great podcast, right? And it's like, hey man, there was some laughter, there were some tears, like it was the good times, it was the worst of times. Like we kind of had the whole roller coaster.
It's like a movie, right?
It's like a movie, right? Like you do everything, and I think that's hopefully what LIVIN Music Festival is all about.
We have a good cast here tonight.
People can get together, they can say, hey, like I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have an incredible, awesome time. I'm going to have some food, I'm going to have some music, a bunch of things that I really love, and I'm also going to reflect on maybe people that I've lost or my own struggle or my own journey, and I'm going to try to do what I can to be the best version of myself.
I would love to see that festival become huge.
Well, I was going to like sort of slide in here, and we talked about this before, TK, is we would love the opportunity to bring the podcast to the LIVIN Festival.
And not only that, I would love to volunteer in any capacity that you thought you needed for your festival.
That'd be great.
I mean, you don't need you've got a personality in
you don't
yourself.
need a 107-year-old MC, but
where's the rim shot on that one? That's incredible.
She's working on something else.
I've thrown a few F-bombs at him.
No, she's mad at me because we argued on the break.
Yeah. No, that's
I am not. I just have this stellar video of. Okay, I'm just trying to get ahead of it. All right.
No, I appreciate that very much, and I think as we've mentioned, like anything that we can do to continue to like make inroads with different facets of people here locally. I mean, eventually, I think we're trying to expand regionally as well. It's been a very organic growth model. Like we're not, we're all volunteers, 100% volunteer organization. So
volunteering's where it's at.
We're not, nobody's trying to turn a we don't have Wall Street, junkies that are trying to make money off of the organization.
You're not going public next week?
No, I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. So I think that we're trying to make inroads in different capacities and ultimately always trying to find different ways to connect with people. And how do you connect with people? You do it through things that they love, right?
Wow.
Like instead of like, we're not trying to say, hey, we're going to get together and everybody going to tell stories about how much we have struggled with stuff. It's like we're going to do positive things and then open up that conversation in that capacity. So
thank you so much for having us.
It's like you said, don't remember how they died, remember how they lived.
Yeah, it'd be nice. And I assume you get some good speakers up there, some real positive
could help get everybody
life-filling
pumped up and down.
speakers.
I want you guys to sing this as loud as you can, okay?
Is that Cruzy?
Are you guys ready?
Chris Cruzy?
Yeah.
I don't have to sing, do I? Oh my God. You don't have to, but I mean, you can.
Last year's
Is this
festival.
going to be a big sing-along? This better be a big sing-along. I want everybody here to sing along if this is what I think it is. I got the rice cooking in a microwave. Got a 3-day beer I don't plan to share.
PT, is that you and the Katt? Are you singing?
Sing along.
Are you singing far left of the microphone because you don't have a great voice, or because you think there's a microphone?
I'm not on the radio because I can sing.
I know.
How does the joke go? I've got a face for radio.
Let's do it, and it's a great day.
Well, as I sit here, and I'm going to volunteer my partner Shayne as well.
Yeah.
If we're in town and there's
I was just
anything
going
that
to say,
we can do,
that's in between the trips.
if there's anything we can do to help you, I'm in.
Awesome.
I've learned, and again, I don't want to get redundant on this. I am considerably older than both of you are, and I have learned.
Where's the rim shot on that one?
Kiss my ass.
Was he saying individually or put together?
It's pretty close either way.
You know, your values change, and I know that this life's not about me, and I volunteer in so many different organizations, and
We're in the process of starting a new.
My wife said to me
right
one
now.
night, when I finally retired for the 6th time from the Rowdy Cowboy Show, I went to.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
I went to the. We live just north of Wyoming, and I started calling bingo at the old folks' home in Wyoming on Monday night. So my wife says, "Well, Tom, you went from being a rowdy cowboy on Monday night to being the rowdy bingo caller at the old folks' home in Wyoming."
Within a week.
Yeah, I know. It was just. Anyway, that's a little bit of humor, but volunteering and doing things for other people is certainly where your life is leading you.
Yeah.
And I know Shayne's of the same mindset. Anything we can do to help that project is I'm touched by that.
Well,
it's people that are these young, especially the young kids, because mentoring at my church. We have the 6th largest church in America, and
Eagle Brook.
I had a real close friend that I mentored with. He and his wife, and they were struggling with their son. And they're struggling, and they asked me to try and interject, and I tried, but he was just unapproachable.
Sure.
God dang it! A week later, the kid's dead. And I'm like,
jeez,
we couldn't. This was a case where we tried. Somebody tried. His parents tried. I tried to connect with him.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that are killing themselves that don't have anyone that's trying to. And sometimes it doesn't take much. Sometimes it's just a message from you on the radio, and you can do so much. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little
I think that's
emotional, and we would love to help you in that. That's a wonderful deal.
Well, we certainly appreciate it, and we, like I said, we definitely will connect with that offline. September 17th and 18th at ERX Motor Park. I think maybe to close on that particular topic, or just even in general, right, is
who are the artists that are playing? So I want to get to that
Montgomery
too.
Gentry, I love it.
So don't forget that we're going to hit the promo on that. So go ahead and finish your thought, but I want to hit promo on it.
So Eddie Montgomery, so Natalie Murphy, who you saw there, Chris Cruzy.
Natalie's played with everybody in the region.
And Jake Nelson. They're like the main stage performers. So Jake Nelson, Natalie Murphy, Chris Cruzy, and Eddie Montgomery of Montgomery Gentry. And there's music throughout the day on Saturday as well with Haley James, Swanee Rose, the Jensen Sisters, and Russ Parrish. And then Papa Bear Norton is on the side stage, like kind of the VIP side stage. And then Friday night, we're having a free night where people can just come out and listen to music with the Thrillbillies and then the Jensen Sisters opening for them as well.
Okay.
There's a cornhole tournament. There's going to be a barbecue rib competition. So we've kind of tried to turn it into a scenario where it's going to be really just a weekend of not only fun and music or whatever, but also like kind of a gathering. We got some yoga, meditation on Saturday morning, coffee and conversations on Saturday morning.
That'll be good for Shayne.
Yep. There you go. Nature walk type of deal. That's a Shayne thing. Just an opportunity for people to sort of reflect on, maybe where their year's been or going and all that kind of stuff in an environment that people are all part of it. And I guess where I was going with that thought process, Shayne, is like, a lot of things that we've talked about tonight, and whether it's been with LIVIN or other things that we've been involved with in our life, to me, one of the biggest lessons maybe that we can learn as people is like empathy is such a powerful thing. And I feel like if the world, and maybe just if people in general, tried to go through their lives with just a little bit more empathy towards like what your neighbor or like other people are going through, to me, like that would make the world a better place. You don't have to agree with everybody, but just like understand like where other people are coming from and have a little bit of respect for, whatever it is that kind of drives them. And whether that is, mental illness, or whether that is a cancer battle, or whether that is just like having a bad day at work or whatever it is. Yeah, like just depression have some empathy towards
depression is the epidemic.
Yeah, 100%. Yes,
yeah.
And I think that, like, honestly, you look at veterans, like right now with, we with the Afghanistan situation, and veterans like feeling as though they spent the last 20 years of their life and lost brothers and sisters in arms, and then like. I'm sure they're struggling right now.
It's a mess.
Like going like, what the hell did just happen or whatever. And so
trillions
you look at
of dollars,
right? Just the PTSD from like a lot of that stuff. So the bottom line is, it's just like there's a lot of stuff going on. If you have some empathy, maybe that's my message that I would just say is like to inspire people. Say, look, just next time you're going to say something or do something, just try a little empathy. Just understand what that person is potentially going through.
Empathy is not the same as sympathy.
Yes.
Empathy is kind of a combination of sympathy and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just for those, some people don't know what the word empathy means. They hear the word sympathy.
Empathetic, sympathetic. They are different.
They are different.
100%.
I want to do a shout-out to the Eagles Healing Nest in Sauk Center. It's where we did a festival. I was telling you earlier during the break, Travis Tritt's daughter performed there.
Yeah.
Steve Miller's band.
Is that Melody up there?
Yeah.
Melody? Yeah.
Yeah. What she lost her husband
Yeah.
and her son in war, and she started the Eagles Healing Nest up there. Was this huge facility that used to be a facility for women, I think, that were being locked up. But anyway, the facility was sitting there empty, and she bulldozed the politician. Says, "No, you're going to give this to me."
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful.
Hundreds and hundreds of soldiers that are just, I can't tell you. I emceed that event 2 years ago, and I can't tell you how many soldiers walked up to me and told me I wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for her and her efforts.
Think about that.
I mean, that's just huge. I mean, just the amount of guys that I met in one weekend.
Right.
And, they put them to work up there. They keep the facility clean, painted, the gardens, the lawn. And I'm sorry, I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but you were talking about the soldiers and the Eagles Healing Nest up in Sauk Center. It was a huge deal, and that thing it never went any further than 1 year. But
yeah, they do some great work up there, though.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember correctly, I think they expanded to another facility, maybe in Anoka, but I could be wrong. I know
they were combining.
They were
those
trying.
two,
Okay,
yes.
that was the other one. That one at that house in Anoka, off of
Yep.
whatever, just north of Main Street, just south of 10 there or whatever. I think. So yeah, they're doing great stuff, and there's a lot of people. I mean, I think there's a lot of organizations, a lot of people out there in the mental health space or the suicide prevention space in some capacity, and I think hopefully with LIVIN, what we're trying to do is. We're definitely not trying. We want to be a supplement and or a complement to all of those organizations, right? We never want to compete per se. If that makes sense.
You're not reinventing the wheel.
No, if anything, what we want to do is we want to say, look, here's an organization, whether it's Eagles Healing Nest or whatever, they're doing a great job. It's like, hey man, that organization is LIVIN Foundation approved, and we put a little hashtag LIVIN stamp on there, and we either help them with our resources or our funding or whatever it is, and then just do that same thing with with organizations and people all over the, eventually all over the metro or all over the, the region or, maybe all over the country. I don't know. I don't know where it goes. I think it's organically.
That's the excitement of it.
Right. That's the point of it. Every morning. And I always tell people, it's you know what? I didn't
it's
get
like
up.
wildfire, brother.
I didn't get up to, I didn't wake up one day and decide I wanted to be part of the LIVIN movement or whatever. This kind of, it happened, and I'm trying to take. We say this all the time. You can't change the past. All you can do is affect the future. And so, instead of focusing on the past and like maybe being frustrated and being angry or being sad or whatever, I still take those emotions, but I take those and try to do it in a positive way and make change like in our world, right? Like that's what it's all about. So
It's morphed to what it is, and it'll continue, and I get that. It's a great
living.
deal.
It is. It's huge. Yeah, and I don't think I know he's being very humble, but he's really understating just how big it already is. And that's why I use the reference of wildfire, because it's like you never know where the breeze is going to blow that sucker, but it will grow.
Well, that's true. That's true, yeah.
You know, and that's what we're seeing with it, because you got these people that are dedicated fans that travel around and they throw the stickers up in different places. Like there was some gal that went to Europe and was putting stickers on bridges in France or something. And
It
I was
went
like,
viral at one point in time on Reddit because it was like a free sticker thing. And at one point in time, I was kind of frustrated because I was like, well, people are just like applying, like they would go to our website and get free stickers or whatever. But then I was like, you know what though? If we can send a card with it, with like what LIVIN is all about, and it was incredible. Like we sent the decals that were free, and they're still free on our website, livinfoundation.org. But then we sent the card, the informational card with it, like a little postcard, and then we had people like writing us to us, say, hey, you know what? I never heard about this. I didn't know what it was, and this is super powerful to me. And all of a sudden, people are putting LIVIN stickers on their guitar cases and on their laptops and their suitcases or whatever, traveling the world with LIVIN on their suitcase, man. And it's
it's amazing.
It's a pretty powerful thing, and
It
like
starts conversation because people are like, what is that?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. It starts conversation. People go, what's LIVIN? They go, let me tell you something about LIVIN.
I just took that one out of your pocket, by the way. Before we let you get out of here, PT, because we are getting up against the clock here.
No worries, man.
But I can't let you run without us going into one more of your projects that I know you're excited to talk about, and that is one that just sort of like got brought back from the dead recently, and that's the PT on the patio. Now, I had the opportunity, TK, to experience a handful of these PT on the patios back in the day when they were with the other affiliate. And it was super fun to get to experience these things, because not only is PT a great host and a wonderful MC, he's very entertaining, and obviously we've talked at length about how fun he is just to hang out with, but the things that he does with these PT on the patios, the air fiddle contest is like legendary now in this market.
Yeah, so basically PT on the Patio is just a traveling fun show with me and like an artist kind of
Iconic
playing
shirt.
tunes. Yeah, just being goofy basically on patios throughout the metro and truth be told, I think I was working for Clear Channel at the time, and there was an event called Oak on the Water, which was Brian Oak with Cities 97 Oak on the Water. And like I kind of watched his show, and this is what we were talking about when I wanted to be in radio. Like I would watch, see what was going on, and kind of learn from it, and say, okay, well, like how could I take that and do my thing or whatever. And so decided that PT on the patio was what we were going to do, and it's basically, like I said, just me being out on patios playing games. I do PT Pyramid, which is basically like $25,000 pyramid. We do Name That Tune. We do like table trivia or whatever, and then the air fiddle competition, as Shayne mentioned, basically came out of the fact that I was like, I got to have something that is just like, I'm just known for with PT on the patio. And I'm driving. I'll never forget this. I was right by Rockwoods on where you go 169 south, and it's like it kind of comes up and you're like got Rockwoods on your right, and I think it was Cowboy Jack's on your left, and you're kind of up top. And Colin Baton Rouge came on my radio, right? And I'm like, this song has always been like my favorite damn song of all time, or one of them, whatever, right?
Mine too.
And it's super
Love
fast.
it.
It's only 2.5 minutes long. So I'm thinking to myself, like, logistically it works. And like you think about people like doing like an air drums or like air guitar. Well, in country music, you've got the fiddle. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what if we did an air fiddle competition at like every PT on the patio for like prizes or whatever. And I brought it back to the folks at my radio station at the time, which was Bob FM. And I will say this, a bunch of them were looking around like, this guy's effing nuts. Like, what is he talking about? It's crazy. And I say, you know what? And I'll never forget this part too. I said, you know what? When you're on the bottom, when you're Rocky Balboa, you have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. Like we were not, we were not number one. So like when you're not number one, you can take chances, man. You can do whatever you want. And that's what I told them. I said, we're going to try this and see what happens. If we fall on our face, we fall on our face. Well, here we are 7 years later, and I'm ordering Amazon miniature little fiddles, like I order these miniature fiddles on Amazon. Shh, don't tell anybody where they come from. Okay, so the air fiddle trophy.
Edit it out.
The air fiddle trophy. And honestly, so then people think they go home with a prize and like this little, like, you open up the little case and it's got nothing, it's just got the bow in it, even though they get the fiddle too, but... it's just kind of become a thing. And so there are people that have come back, like, week after week to try to win the air fiddle competition at PT on the Patio. And then, I tell them about LIVIN, and, obviously it's become a platform for LIVIN as well. And, after the air fiddle competition, I ask people, I tell them, hey, this is what LIVIN is all about, and this is why I'm here. And we finish every single PT on the Patio with a tune, Travis Tritt, Great Day to Be Alive. And most of the time people, sing along, and it's kind of a, it's a great experience, I hope, for people that come out to the show. So that's where it is. That's where it ends.
PT on the Patio.
Ben Johnson.
Yep, upcoming with Ben Johnson, September 2nd. And by the way, a hometown show. That's my first ever. When I was doing podcasts, like way back in the day, like I said, 10 years ago, I was doing these. I kind of did something like that at a patio in Bloomington, and that's my hometown. So to have PT on the Patio like come back to Bloomington now at the North Star Tavern is going to be big.
Where it's going to be?
North Star Tavern, which is at the place used to be Loman's Plaza, and then the last one is going to be September 9th at the Lookout in Maple Grove.
Okay,
that'll be the last one. So we'll do some stuff there. So
we did a show there.
It's a good place. Mike does a great job.
Yeah,
good guy. And then the next week will be LIVIN Music Festival, and we don't do a PT on the Patio there. We don't do an air fiddle competition there, but we will do. I mean, I'm pretty sure Chris Cruzy's going to do Great Day to Be Alive again. So.
How do you not have an air fiddle contest at the LIVIN Music Festival? You can bring them up on the stage.
It's a separate brand, man. It's a separate. It's like PT on the Patio. So I don't know.
It's all you, brother.
Yeah,
it's all PT.
That's true. It's all part of the same umbrella.
It's all part of the same flow, the main.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got some links there. PT, why don't you, before Tom and I close out the show, why don't you just drop some social links, web links, stuff like that for folks so they can find you, find your projects?
Sure. So the easiest thing for LIVIN is just livinfoundation.org. Again, LIVIN is LIVIN foundation.org. That's where you can pretty much find everything there on the social platforms of Instagram and Facebook. We're just LIVIN Foundation on those as well. And then my stuff is just Paul Thomas Show. So basically just all written out, Paul Thomas Show, one word. That's where you get all my stuff. So.
And then Midwest CMO.
Yep, Midwest CMO. So Midwest CMO is at Midwest CMO on Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's just written out. So it's Midwest Country Music Organization.
Okay,
so
fantastic.
Website for that is midwestcountrymusic.org. So we're hoping that, with the Midwest Country Music Organization, we're hoping that, eventually if we were doing boots and backstraps like 10 years from now, like basically anybody that is everybody in the country music landscape in the upper Midwest is like part of the Midwest CMO. Like that's kind of the ultimate goal or whatever, is to provide that kind of that background. And really cool, I'm doing a syndicated radio show now called Midwest Country Music Originals. So all of the artists in the Midwest CMO that have original music can submit their music, and it goes on the show. And we've got it syndicated right now to like 16 radio stations in the upper Midwest.
Wow.
And, our goal is to get to like probably 20 or so by the end of this year, maybe 30 or so by the end of next year. So like, what's really cool is then you get these guests that come on this show, on your guys' show, that are musicians. A lot of them are part of the Midwest CMO. And so when they submit their music, like we get them on this show, and all of a sudden they're being played in Iowa and Wisconsin and South Dakota or whatever. And it really helps to blanket their music out there, which is super neat. So
it
really
is.
Proud of that, man.
Well, it's been an honor to have you here, brother. I mean,
it's been an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
I mean, other than catching up, 'cause it's been a while since we've been to sit in the same room together.
We should just go to a Serums and have some wings and then do the same thing. Yeah,
we'll drag this guy with.
Yeah. I'd love to go.
Yeah, telling you, it's good.
Love the wings.
Cheers, guys.
It's been a pleasure having you, brother. Thank you so much for carving out some dad and wife time.
Yeah.
So make sure you thank Brooke and your lovely baby girl for letting us have you for a couple hours.
Appreciate you guys very much, man. Best luck with the rest of your show as you continue to build and grow this brand, and anything that I can do to continue to support it and cross-promote or whatever, very grateful. So thank you guys very much, and much love.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. Folks, thank you for joining us for another episode of Boots and Backstraps. And again, we thank PT for joining us this week. Don't forget to comment, like, and share all of the episodes that you're watching here, even if you're just catching a few minutes here and there throughout your workday or in your drive to and from work. We appreciate all the support you give us. Make sure you comment, as I mentioned, because it helps with the algorithm. And TK, let's bring this plane in for a landing, brother.
All right. Great show, PT. Thanks for being with us. And folks, whether you're belting out your favorite country song or out there pursuing your favorite game animal, I encourage you to use that same passion to pursue the Lord. He'll teach you to shoot straight. Thanks for viewing this week, and we'll see you next week.
hunt is on, looking for backstraps, way deep in the woods, tracking in a swamp to a hay field under the harvest moon. When the tags are filled, it's time to switch up our boots. Head down to the honky tonk, get us a swing dance or two. We're talking about boots and backstraps.